Moonlit musings for sports-mad vampires, factory shift workers,
Never mind hello, Chuck.
And men with prostate trouble. Morning, Andy.
What are you doing?
Make sure you stay awake for the radio show that never sucks. The Nosferatu Mics on Talk Sport.
Hello, how are you today?
Look at the light.
Do you know why I would never go to Bangkok? I'm too frightened that I'd be used as a drug mule.
There was one actually on last week, I think, about Wales.
Yeah.
Which was fascinating.
A documentary on Wales?
Yes.
Yes, I like documentaries on Wales.
Did you see the one that was on last week?
No.
Oh.
What was it about?
Wales.
Look at the light.
This is Talk Sport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham, and it's time to say a very good morning to Mr. Mike Porky Parry. Very good morning to you, Mr. Parry.
Yeah, good morning, Mike. I'm not sure it is a great morning.
Why not?
I have found out things about the transport policy in this country
Have
now
you?
which worry me so much that I think it's going to affect the economic future of this country in
Really?
a huge way.
Okay.
A huge way. I mean, I have to drive in from the south of
Right.
London because that's where Stockbroker Belt is,
Yes.
okay?
Yeah, of course.
You know,
We've got a couple of questions about Stockbroker Belt Surrey coming up in Ask Porky, actually.
Excellent. That's where the Surrey Downs are,
Yeah.
North Downs, South Downs, you know, that's
Right.
all the way
The
to the
Epsom
coast.
Downs.
Epsom Downs, all
Are the
that
Epsom
kind of
Downs
stuff.
part of the North Downs?
Yes, the Epsom Downs part of North Downs. That's
Yeah.
why they're called the Downs.
Right.
You know, you couldn't have, like, Downs unless
So why
they
do they
were
call them the
collected.
Epsom Downs as well, then? Is the Epsom
Well,
Downs
well-
separate from the North Downs?
No. The Epsom Downs is within the North Downs.
Right.
But you've got to remember, they've corralled a part of the North Downs
Right.
around the town of Epsom, the small
Right.
town of Epsom, and made
Okay.
it the most famous racecourse in the world.
Yeah, of course, but
And
are
that's
there
why it's
other
called-
downs then which are also named within the Northern Downs and the Southern Downs? Do you know what I mean?
Well, I'm not an expert on Downs. You know, I just tell you that there's a North Downs and there's a
Right,
South
but that's
Downs.
what I'm saying, if
And
there's a
within the
North
North
Down-
Downs, where I live, there's
Yeah.
an Epsom Downs.
Yeah,
okay?
but why would there be an Epsom Downs with it? It's like having the Alps and then having, like, you know, you've got the Swiss Alps, you've got the French Alps.
Yes, that's right.
You've got
Yeah.
the German Alps.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, but why would you have just Epsom Downs inside the North Downs?
I've just told you, because they race horses in Epsom Downs. That's
Okay.
why it's very famous.
So-
Of course there are other
so
downs.
there's no other downs?
There's Redhill Downs, Reigate Downs.
Oh, right, okay.
There's Salisbury Downs.
Salisbury Plain.
Salisbury Plain
Well,
as
that's
well.
nowhere near Epsom, though.
Salisbury Plain's very famous for the fact that tanks run around on it
That's
blowing
right.
things up.
Very true. I used to
You
live
know?
on the north side of it.
I know, and you've got to be very careful. I came round a bend once on the on Salisbury Plain when I
Yeah.
was going south from sort of, I think it was after the Cheltenham meeting, going down to the coast.
Yeah.
And as I came round this bend and the high hedgerows on either side, I literally nearly hit a Chinook helicopter
Yeah.
that was lifting a tank off the road.
Blimey.
It's unbelievable. Can you imagine a helicopter lifting a tank?
Yeah,
No, I didn't think I could.
I used to see it. I used to see that happening all the time. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
we talk about football, though. Can we not talk?
Yeah, we'll
we
talk about
your-
football in a
your
second.
transport policy
no,
later.
No, talk about football in a second.
No.
First of all, I've discovered that all these roadworks coming in from the Downs into South London, then
Yeah.
into Central London, where the TalkSport studios are.
And there are an awful lot of roadworks.
I mean, for about 3 miles, I can't understand why the inside lane of the road is closed off completely.
Yeah.
There's all that fencing, you know, the orange and white
Yeah, yeah.
fencing, the
Lot of
ridiculous and all
cones.
that. And I've now discovered they're now building something called the Cycle Superhighway.
Oh, yeah.
So that these people in Lycra with helmets on can get on the bikes every morning and cycle into town, you
Yeah.
know, 3 or 4 miles, and then in the evening cycle back.
Right.
The only difficulty about this arrangement is, apart from the fact that it takes 50% of road space
Yes.
to cars,
which therefore makes the tailbacks even longer.
and cars, of course, fund transport in this country. You
Yeah.
know, we pay the taxes, we
Yeah.
pay the fuel taxes, the road taxes, every other tax, and cyclists pay nothing. Apart from that, these cycle lanes are only ever used for about 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening.
Right.
So all overnight and for the rest of the middle of the day, there's nobody in these
Right.
cycle
Are you
streets.
allowed to use the cycle lanes then during
I
that time?
don't think you are.
Really?
I don't think you are.
I mean, it's going to be
because-
like a bus lane. You're going to get a ticket
I think
by camera if you go in it.
I think it's like a bus lane type arrangement, and I begin to wonder. About this. You take this to its logical conclusion,
Yes,
right?
right.
And if we're all forced out of cars onto bikes, then
Is that the logical conclusion?
well, that is the logical
That's
conclusion.
surely the illogical conclusion.
No, it's not. It's the logical
No, it's
conclusion.
not.
If you make life harder and harder and harder for the motorist, okay, you force the motorist out of his car, so we'll all be riding around on bikes soon because there'll be no reason to ride to get into
Well,
a
maybe
car.
you could come in on a bike then.
Well, I can't. It's too far out.
What do you mean?
Well, only 1/3 of my heart works.
Yeah.
How am I supposed to get on a bike and cycle 15
Well, it might be
miles?
good for you, though, instead of walking.
No,
you could go on a bicycle.
no. How do you get uphill on a bike? You know, you can't. You have to
pedal
get
faster.
off. No, you have to get off and push it. And then when you get on to the top of the hill, you get on the bike and you freewheel down the other side.
Right.
Now then, the issue here with me is this: do you think, and I'm being quite serious here,
Yeah.
there is some kind of conspiracy from an overseas enemy of ours,
Yeah.
or something like this? Maybe
We don't have any more enemies, do we?
Maybe, well, I hope we haven't got too many because we haven't got a navy to defend ourselves anymore. But, you know, I wonder if there's somewhere in the world there is a sort of, far left-wing communist block of people who've decided how to ruin the Western economy.
Yeah.
And because you
ruin
ruin
bikes.
Exactly. If you ruin the Western economy, you ruin the West.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
The economy collapses. They've had it. We've had it all together. So what I'm saying is, if you drive everybody back in time, so if we all had to go and ride around on horses and take handsome cabs instead of black cabs...
Maybe you could use a horse instead of coming on the bus.
Don't be trite, because this is a very serious issue. If we're all forced back to do that, the economic wealth of this country and the economic well-being of this country will start to deteriorate, and we literally will... society will collapse, and it's all down to these cycle super lanes. I'm telling you.
Well, I don't think you should worry about that.
Cycle superhighways. I'm worried about them.
We'll talk about it a little bit later on.
The other thing I'm worried about, by the way, excuse me, while we're talking about transport, in the old Mert tonight, through the frustrations of trying to negotiate the cycle superhighway, a yellow light comes on my dashboard. Guess what it says?
What does it say?
Check brake pads immediately.
Oh dear, that's not good.
Check brake pads immediately.
Did you check them immediately?
Well, how am I supposed to do that? Do you want me to stop the car in the middle of the cycle superhighway, get out and get under the car?
You call the AA or something.
Do you know where the brake pads are on your car?
You call somebody to check them, because if they say that, you could crash the car. I mean, that's they may
well.
not be working.
This is what worries me. This is what worries me. Now, this is a brand new car. It was only serviced 5,000 miles ago at 10,000 miles.
3 years old, isn't it?
No, it's 18 months old.
18
months old. It's only ever done 15,000 miles, right? And in those 15,000 miles, you do not expect your brake pads to go. If they were going, they should have been changed at the 10,000 service.
Well,
something's going on.
What happens when you buy one of these cheap bottom-of-the-range cars?
It's not a bottom-of-the-range car, as you well know.
It is.
Well, at least it's not a 13-year-old car. I'm surprised you've got any brake pads left.
My brake pads are fine.
I didn't know modern cars had brake pads. I thought that it was all like hydraulic piston stuff now.
Hydraulic pistons?
Yeah.
Well, they've still got brake pads. How do you think they stop the car?
Well, through hydraulic pistonry.
Really?
Yeah. No,
hydraulic
seriously.
pistonry?
Yeah.
Anyway, listen, let me talk to you about Steve McLaren, because that's what we want to talk about. Steve McLaren, who's a man that you've followed his career many times.
Yes, but he's not been appointed Newcastle manager yet, has he?
It does seem as though he is, though, doesn't
it? What's all this seem? I keep asking people and experts. I say, what's the position? Has John Carver left Newcastle?
That's what everybody's saying.
It would seem so.
Yeah.
There's no official announcement from Newcastle. Aren't we all a bit prematurely, condemning Mr. Carver to the dole queue or death or whatever, professional death and all that kind of stuff? I mean, it's all a bit hasty, isn't it?
You don't think it's going to happen, then?
I don't know if it's going to happen, but I mean, the thing is, Mike, I've been a professional journalist for 30 years. The first rule of law is you don't assume anything. You find out what the facts are. What are the facts here? Let us look at the facts. The facts are that officially nothing has changed.
OK, well, what about West Ham? They've got a new manager there.
They've got a new manager,
Yeah, you're sure about that one?
I'm absolutely sure about it. And
isn't it strange that the two managers that appear to have been appointed, regardless of what you say about Steve McLaren, were actually the two managers that caused Steve McLaren's sort of England demise?
Slaven Bilic for Croatia. That's a good point. And the other one?
Steve McLaren.
Well, Steve McLaren, no, but he was the victim of demise.
That's what
he didn't cause his demise.
They were both playing in that same game.
Well, they were playing that same game. That's interesting. Now, Slaven Bilic and Mr. Abrahams was, tweeting out in his grovelling fashion this morning, "Oh, brilliant choice," and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So all I tweeted out to Mr. Abrahams was he first choice for West Ham?
Yes.
I didn't get a reply.
Yeah, well, he wasn't, was he?
No.
I mean, even West Ham have said that they wanted Carlo Ancelotti.
That's right.
They wanted Rafa Benitez.
That's right.
They maybe even wanted David Moyes. So
yeah,
he may not even have been their third choice.
Exactly. So you think he's fourth choice?
I think he's at least third choice and possibly fourth. Yeah.
You think he's at least third, possibly fourth choice? I wonder how the West Ham fans feel about that. We'd like to hear from them, of course, wouldn't we?
Well, I was quite surprised listening to some of them as I was driving in, saying that they were disappointed that they didn't get their first choice manager, which would have been either Rafa Benitez or Carlo Ancelotti. I think they're being a bit deluded about that, aren't they?
Well, no, because they're only following the lead of their co-chairman, and their co-chairman, Mr. Gold, said some time ago that he thought West Ham, by the time they moved to the Olympic Stadium, would have become such a big club that they would be an attractive proposition to managers of the calibre of Rafa Benitez and
Carlo Ancelotti.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is...
I mean, they wanted Jurgen Klopp as well, didn't they?
And I think Jurgen Klopp was in their thoughts. So does this mean that when they move to the Olympic Stadium next year and they assume the mantle of big club, will they then change the manager from Slaven Bilic to somebody else?
That may well be the case. It's an interesting point. Now, according to my sources, Newcastle caretaker manager John Carver has been sacked along with coach Steve Stone. Right? So that seems to be the case. If Newcastle fans know any better than that, and they don't think it's actually happened, then by all means give us a call as well. 08717 223344. We're going to talk to a man next, though, who knows an awful lot about West Ham and Newcastle. You know who it is?
West Ham and Newcastle jointly.
Yeah, goalkeeper.
Goalkeeper.
That's Goldfinger.
Yeah, I know that. I'm just adapting.
Shaka Hislop.
Shaka Hislop. I know Shaka very well.
He's going to be talking to us in a little while.
Good
man. Coming up, we'll talk more about your car. We'll talk more about West Ham. We'll talk more about Newcastle and some of the big stories on the back pages as well. This is Talk Sport. We are the Two Mics. This is Talk Sport Extra Time. We are the Two Mics. We're going to talk to Shaka Hislop coming up soon. Want to hear from West Ham and Newcastle fans as well, like 08717 223344. It is, however, time to announce the winner of Winners and Losers, which is a competition we have every Monday night on the show. I have to say there was quite a lot of Twitter action on your choices. Some people thought that your choices were very weak this week.
No, they didn't.
Yes,
they
did.
Some thought they were very strong.
No,
many thought yours were very weak.
Yeah. Well, would you like to hear the result?
Don't be selective about, your examination of the critiques of our very, very bright listeners, please.
Well, obviously,
no misleading.
Obviously, what we can say is that the vote was retweeting for Mike Parry to win and favouriting for me to win.
Yes.
Right? Because last week you were favourite and I was retweeted, and you suggested that actually you might be better off being retweeted because that would make it easier for you to win.
Okay.
So the result is retweets 121.
Ooh-wee, wow.
Favourites.
Yep.
178.
I don't believe that. I'm sorry, but you fiddle this thing.
I can't fiddle it. It's a vote on Twitter.
The ultimate gerrymander.
It's a vote on Twitter. It cannot be fiddled.
You always confuse the listeners by changing retweet and favourite each week.
That was at your request.
So the listeners get confused. It's not their fault they get confused. You confuse them.
That was at your request. So the voting closed at midnight. And I'm about to send out the screen grab.
I believe I'm more popular than you, generally.
I know you'd like to think
Generally speaking, I say I'm more popular than you.
You'd like to think that, but I don't crave popularity.
You're a difficult person to like. Let me tell you,
I don't crave popularity.
I don't crave popularity.
You do.
It comes naturally.
Yeah, you think you're popular, but actually,
I can't help it. I just respond to the ambience of the audience.
Well, all I can tell you is that we've now had 8 of these competitions, right, over the last couple of months, and it's now 7 to me and 1 to you.
Yes.
So I'd have to say it's not about popularity. It's about how good your choices are, basically.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
People don't just vote for you because they think you've got, a better personality.
You mean more charisma,
or more charisma, or more attractive, or anything like that.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that this is a very good competition, to be honest.
Really,
I'm not sure that it's got a future.
Yeah, well,
I think the odds are finding this rather droll and boring, and I think we'll have to replace it with something else. Quite frankly,
well, we might come up with that. Something. You know what we haven't done actually? We haven't come up with a quiz for this week. So
yes, we have. Yes.
Have we?
Don't remember what we said?
Well, you said to me you came up with an idea on Sunday night when I saw you before we did the show at St James's Theatre. You said you wanted to be quizzed over the next 4 weeks on 4 separate decades.
60s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
Yeah, that sounds awfully boring, doesn't
it? Listen,
I don't mind doing you a quiz occasionally on the 60s and then a few weeks later one on the 70s.
Listen, will you please understand?
Yeah.
That was debate. It's called swapping a few ideas, exchanging a few theories, and all that kind of stuff. Don't worry about that.
So we haven't decided on it
Yes,
yet.
we have, yes.
So what are we doing then?
We're doing the Columbo series of TV programmes.
Columbo series?
Yes.
You want to do a quiz on Columbo?
Yes, I do, yes.
Dear God.
Yeah,
that's going to cause problems for the independent quizmasters.
Well, I'm afraid that, I'm not here to make their life easy.
No, maybe not.
You try to make their life easy by asking the most ridiculous questions to which nobody could answer, but I generally do get through this smoke screen of difficulty that you put up.
Right.
But, Columbo.
All right, so would you say you know a lot about Columbo?
I know an awful lot about Columbo. I've seen each episode at least 3 times.
Would you say you're an expert?
Yes, I would, yes.
Really?
What are you laughing at? Why are you laughing? What's your problem?
Because when you get 3 out of 10... when you get 3 out of 10 on Thursday... And you'll say, no, I never claimed I was an expert. And that's what you'll say.
Listen, the problem with you is you don't have any commitment to anything in your life.
That's
your life's
not true.
A shambolic...
That is not true.
A shambolic array
I'd like to get you committed.
You're like... Do you know what you are? You're like a drunken man staggering down a corridor with metal lockers on either side, and all you can hear is
doors?
Bang. No, lockers.
Oh, lockers,
bang.
yeah.
The reason I say that, actually, is because, in the Old Express building in Fleet Street, we actually did have these corridors, right, and there were metal lockers down each side.
What were they for?
Well, like each sub-editor, had his own locker to put his, his book in, hang his coat in, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, his cardigan, that's right, and his stash of pens and all that kind of stuff. And a few of them, put, half-naked women pictures in these lockers and all that kind of stuff. It was all that sort of thing,
I remember that.
Yeah.
That was the old building, I suppose.
It was the old building, and it was a traditional thing. But we had an editor there who was 6'3", and had a history of...
Don't give his name out, whatever you do.
Oh, no, it's easy. It was Sir Larry Lamb. and no, he was a legendary figure. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he was a legendary figure, and in fact he created the modern day Sun really when Rupert Murdoch first bought it and changed it from what it was to largely what it is today. Yeah. But he eventually came to the Express, and everybody who's ever worked in the newspaper industry and others in politics know that Sir Larry liked to drink. Yeah. In fact, he liked several drinks, and. On one occasion, I remember being there, and I saw him come walking up the corridor, and it was literally bang, bang. He was literally bouncing off the lockers.
Well, at least you knew he was coming, I suppose.
Sorry?
At least you knew he was coming.
Yeah, well, you knew it was coming because you could hear that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was like listening to cymbals coming around the corner because he was banging off the lockers. But anyway, that's what I say is that's the way that your views and values in life oscillate between half-heartedness, nothingness, and everythingness. If you see what I mean.
Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Slaven Bilic in a moment because you know that he plays the guitar, he speaks several languages, and he's a fully qualified lawyer.
He's got an earring as well. Is he the only manager in the Premier League who will have an earring?
I don't know if he has an earring. Is that true?
Well, he certainly had an earring when he was the manager of Croatia.
Oh, right, or maybe he still does. Now, here's Jack, who has sent in a text to 81089. Right. Judging by Porky's attitude to country speed limits, I imagine he's one of these that speeds up to traffic lights or to the cars in front and has to slam all the brakes on, hence the excessive wear. I have a Merc with the same mileage and my pads have thousands of miles left in them. I can say to him, I was actually going to suggest that to you, that maybe it's your driving style that has worn the brake pads, because you are one of those people that slams the brakes on quite a lot. Yes,
I don't.
You're not a smooth driver.
How do you know?
Because I've sat in your car.
Yes.
You drove me to Portsmouth once. I wouldn't describe you as a smooth driver.
Really?
No.
You don't know what a smooth driver is, mate. It's not a question of being a smooth driver. It's a question of having that brain to move through the gears at such an efficient pace. That's what I'd say. I'd say I was an efficient driver, to be honest.
No, I
very efficient.
I wouldn't say you are.
Very efficient. I get more miles per gallon out of my tank full of diesel than you do because I'm an efficient driver. I know how to.
Well, how come the brakes have all worn out?
Well, this is a good question. I'm going to go straight to the old dealer tomorrow morning.
I don't think you should risk driving home.
What do you mean?
I don't think you should risk driving home. I think you should leave the car here. I think you should call the dealer, ask him to come and get it. No, if they say, look at the pads immediately, that doesn't mean, like, look at them after you've driven another 30 or 40 miles. It means immediately.
I don't think it said immediately. I think it said check brake pads.
Well, you said immediately.
I don't think it said immediately.
Really? What did it say? Check brake pads in a couple of weeks.
No. I think it's. I'm going to take it to the dealer.
Yeah, don't worry. We only ever put these alarm signs up when there's nothing wrong.
Well,
you know.
It still breaks. I mean, listen, the danger is, of course, you could be absolutely right.
What are you going to do?
Supposing I go up to a roundabout, put my foot on the brakes, nothing happens, bang. I'll be going back 35 years to the day when I drove Morris 1100 over a roundabout because I didn't see it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you should be very, very concerned. Now, according to The Guardian, back page this morning, for sports section, West Ham to back Bilic with spending spree, and they're going after Loic Remy. So ambitious targets they're going to have over the course. Now, the reason I'm interested in your view on this, right, is because Everton, West Ham and Newcastle are all about the same kind of area of the football of the league, aren't they, basically?
Okay, yeah.
I mean, they're all sitting there somewhere between kind of 9th and 12th place.
Yeah, I sort of agree with you.
Newcastle should have been there had they not had that horrendous...
I would say of the three clubs, Everton are the bigger of the three.
Well, I don't know if that's true.
I would say they are.
I don't know if that's true.
Over the last 10 seasons, they are.
Yeah, I mean,
certainly.
possibly.
No, they are over the last 10 seasons.
But what I'm saying is, at the moment, that seems to be where they will all end up. I mean, Newcastle had a horrendous season last season, so they weren't quite where they should have been. But it's all kind of around the middle of the table, isn't it?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And if West Ham are going to spend a great deal of money, is that going to propel them any further up?
Well,
that's the point.
You see, I think the danger here is with West Ham going into uncharted territory with the new Olympic Stadium and all that. Does that mean, A, they have a load of money because they're selling Upton Park, right?
Yeah, well, they must be making some money out of that, and they're getting a free stadium, effectively, aren't they?
Yeah, but I think I'm right in saying that Mr Gold and Mr Sullen have lent the club at least £100 million since they became the owners.
Yeah.
And presumably they will want that money back at some stage.
I would have thought
so that's a debt to be repaid. But it's the other thing is, it's a very big stadium, the Olympic Stadium, and the running costs of it, I would think, are far in excess of the running costs of Upton Park.
Yeah, but isn't somebody else paying the running costs, and aren't they simply paying a lease over the course of the year? Isn't that the point? They don't actually have to worry about how much money they've got coming in.
I don't know how it works, but I mean, West Ham have to pay for the stewards and all that kind of stuff on a weekly basis. A bigger stadium means more stewards and all that kind of stuff.
True.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And you know, there will be things inside the new stadium in terms of technology which are much more advanced than the bowling ground.
Yeah.
And they too are expensive to install and all that kind of stuff. You know. So because that will be needed, tailor-made to a football team rather than an athletics track. So I don't know. But look, all I'm saying is whenever people talk about spending sprees and all that kind of stuff, I sort of, you know, take one step back and think that's all very well, except if it doesn't work, you've got a huge problem on your hands, a.k.a. the Liverpool problem.
Yes, no, absolutely,
you know what I mean?
Right. Although, when he was at Besiktas, which was his last club, they actually knocked Liverpool out of the Europa League, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, actually, yeah. He hasn't got a huge record at club level, has he? He's been most successful and he's still living on the reputation he acquired as manager of Croatia.
Well, apparently
he did very well in international circles, including, of course, as you quite rightly pointed out, being responsible for England's exit from the European Championships.
Well, at Besiktas, he had a 53% win record.
Right.
He had Lokomotiv Moscow, a 40% win record, which is perhaps not so good. 64% at Croatia. And then before that, he was at the Croatian under-21s organisation. That was 55%. And then 64% at Hajduk Split.
Right.
Which is not bad, is it?
Yeah, no, it's not bad at all, I have to say. But nevertheless, it didn't set Europe on fire, did it?
No, it didn't.
In a way that the two previous names that have been bandied around by Mr. Gold, that is Mr. Ancelotti and Mr. Rafa Benitez, did set Europe on fire by winning the ultimate prize in club football, the Champions League.
Yes, true. Well, we shall see. We're going to talk to Shaka Hislop coming up. We're going to take some calls as well. 08717 22 3344. There's a lot said about the West Ham way. There's a lot said about how the fans at Newcastle pretty much have dictated policy there for the last couple of years as far as managers are concerned. If you're a Newcastle fan, are you happy with John Carver being chucked out the door along with Steve Stone? And it looks like Steve McLaren coming in. 08717 22 3344. Coming up, it's time to talk to Shaka Hislop. This is TalkSport.
Talk Sport on DAB Digital Radio and 1089 and 1053 AM.
Freedom for sport.
Can we kick it? Yes, we can. Talk Sport.
Shaka Khan, let me rock it, Shaka Khan. Let me rock it, that's all I wanna do. Shaka Khan, let me rock it, Shaka Khan. Let me rock it, got a feel for you. Shaka Khan, what you tell me what you wanna do? Do you feel for me the way I feel for you? Shaka Khan, let me tell you what I wanna do. I wanna love you, wanna hug you, wanna squeeze you too. And let me take it in my arm, let me feel you with my charm, Shaka. Cause you know that I'm the one to keep you warm, Shaka. I'm making more than just a physical.
This is TalkSport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry.
What's
We've
that
got
rap
loads
music
to do.
there?
Eh?
What's the rap music?
It's not really rap music.
What's
it's
rap?
more kind of disco music, really.
Do you know
Shaka
what?
Khan, isn't it?
Do you know? Oh, is it Shaka Khan?
Yeah.
No, Shaka Hislop we're talking to, aren't
Well,
we?
we saw the Shaka
of course we
Hislop,
are. Excellent.
who's not Shaka Khan.
No, exactly.
You catch on quick, don't you?
Yeah, I've
There's
got
no
it.
flies
I've got
on
it.
you.
I've got it.
By
Thanks,
the way,
boys.
couple of
talk to the boys behind the screen.
couple of tweets here that you may wish to take account of, right? Andrew says, Porky's car, check brake pads, don't worry about the time. Here's one from Stephen who says, driving a car that you know is defective will leave you liable and possibly without insurance.
What?
Danger to yourself and others.
Are you mad?
And Colin says, if the light is yellow, Mike, it's okay to drive. It's only when the light is red on the dashboard you don't drive the vehicle.
Well, it's not light, it's writing. It actually says, I can't remember the wording now, but
No, I
it
think you
says...
should need to remember the wording.
It says, check brake pads imminently or something like that, you know what I mean?
Imminently.
I will drive straight to a dealer in the morning and I will, park my car at the front of the queue and say, this car needs looking at now. I'm too busy a man to sit around and wait for you to change brake pads. Get it done while I go and get a cup of coffee, please.
I just hope that you don't hit anybody on the way down there. If I were you, I'd leave the car here, get it towed.
How do you expect me to do that?
Well, you just have to organise, get yourself a bike. Let's talk Shaka Hislop, though, because we've got two managerial appointments as far as we're... Even though the Steve McLaren one seems to be not quite officially confirmed yet. Shaka, very good morning to you. Welcome.
Morning, Mike. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well indeed. I've got Mike Parry with me now as well, because we're the two mics now. Two mics being better than one.
So you have company, Mike.
Yeah. So it's okay that both of us called the same name. It's easy to remember, right?
Yeah, of course it is,
Yeah, that's right.
And Shaka, I'm here to add a bit of sophistication to the show, and I have to say, when we talk about sophistication, we couldn't have a better guest than yourself. I just thought I'd let you know that, okay?
Stop crawling.
As it happens, I have to get my brake pads changed as well, so...
Yeah, good man.
Sophistication coming right in, mate.
Excellent, I love it.
Now, let's start with Slaven Bilic at West Ham. I mean, as far as we know, Shaka, it wasn't their first choice, and they were aiming rather higher than Slaven Bilic. Was that realistic?
No, I guess. I mean, West Ham are still trying to establish themselves as a top-tier Premier League club. That's a process. It's early in the summer as well. I expect there to be a huge managerial merry-go-round between now and when the season kicks off in August. So maybe, some of those bigger names are holding out and hoping that some opens up. But, I think, Slaven Bilic, ex-West Ham player, one the fans know well, had a great managerial stint with Croatia, less so with Moscow and then the Besiktas. But let's hope that Bilic can give the West Ham fans what they've been looking for.
I mean, Shaka, is it always a good idea to bring back the local hero, if you see what I mean? Because it doesn't half raise the expectation level. When people start saying, and I've seen ex-West Ham players today, Tony Cottee, for instance, saying, oh, well, the fans loved him. I mean, that's not really an endorsement for a great manager, the fact that the fans loved him when he was a player. Is it not better, maybe, to bring somebody in from the outside who doesn't have to bend and shape himself to the, the feelings, the passions, the endorsements of the West Ham fans, but to come in with a completely new and open mind about how to do the job?
Yeah, but I think what West Ham have been missing, certainly under Sam Allardyce, is somebody who respects their footballing traditions. And certainly you have that in Slaven Bilic. Now, time will tell. All these things, as they always do, whether Slaven Bilic proves to be the right man. That the fans liked him is I guess, a step and maybe extends their honeymoon period for an extra couple of games. But Slaven Bilic, like every other manager, will be judged on results, performances, and the style of football that they play at West Ham. Mm-hmm. I've said this before on this show that West Ham asks for two things: that you stay in the let me say three things. You stay in the Premier League, you compete, and that you play football in respecting their footballing traditions. Now, Slaven Bilic knows West Ham's footballing traditions, so that's a step in the right direction. And then after that, it's no different from any other manager. Stay in the Premier League and you compete.
But the difference, I suppose, for teams, I mean, I was saying to Mike, who's an Everton fan, I mean, we've got to talk about Newcastle here as well. Newcastle, Everton and West Ham are three clubs that are kind of destined, you would think, to be around about kind of somewhere between 8th and 12th in the league almost every year, really. I mean, can West Ham realistically do anything? I mean, some of the papers this morning saying that they're going to spend big. You know, can they realistically do anything to get themselves any higher up the league?
I don't know. I mean, certainly when I was at West Ham, and I take every opportunity to remind people of this, we finished fifth. But, you know, I think the league was sitting a whole lot different back then. And I think if you look at the structure of the league, you have your top four. You're not quite sure who's going to shift the top four as they are this season. You've got Spurs and Liverpool, who are also promising to spend big, and you have to wait to see how they are. All of a sudden, you're trying to shoehorn a club like West Ham or Everton or whoever it may be into a top four, top six, and you can't spend consistently to compete season in, season out. You have the odd season where you sneak in or you get very close. But generally, no. I think, you know, previously we used to talk about the top four is a league of its own, and then there's a middle of the table league and a bottom of the table league. Now I think, you know, you're looking at a top six almost as being a league of their own, and then the others trying to shake things out in the middle and the bottom.
OK, now, Shaka, you must have great memories about your time at Newcastle, because in those days, Newcastle actually were a force in the land. Now, they're a bit of a laughingstock now. They're a bit of a joke because of the John Carver situation. We think Mr Carver's now gone and they're getting Steve McLaren as their new manager. But do you not look back on your years at Newcastle and wonder how the club became to be seen as such a clownish operation compared to the one you played for?
I think I look back on it and I don't wonder all that much. I think Newcastle, I guess similar to West Ham, but in a different way. They're a big club, but I feel that at Newcastle, owners came in, took over that club with a global audience in focus and lost sight of what made Newcastle a great club. And that's the fans that lived within 50 miles of St. James's Park.
Yes, that's
true. So all of a sudden they were talking, you know, they were looking at the Asian market, the North American market, and seemed to lose focus of what was happening right there in Newcastle upon Tyne.
I think John Hall was the chairman. Sir John Hall was the chairman when you were there, and of course
John Hall was the chairman when I was there,
and he was a Geordie.
Exactly. He was a Geordie, so he understood exactly what was wanted. He understood what made that club great, and I think it's as the league took off and other clubs, well, notably Manchester United, started to have great successes internationally, everybody was trying to follow their mold, and you can't do that with Newcastle. You cannot neglect what's happening on your doorstep, looking after or chasing the pipe dream of global fandom. It's ridiculous, and for me, that was the point, and Newcastle have gone downhill ever since. And until you get owners who understand that fully, that look no further than 50 miles around you, and then what comes after that is a bonus. But that club will be made great, and made great again by the fans closest to St. Jesus Park.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's right. But, I mean, the fans have caused... I suppose I wouldn't say the fans have caused problems at Newcastle, but they've reacted to what they see as problems at Newcastle by sort of booing the players a lot. I mean, they had to make a sort of special begging bowl kind of appeal to them for the last game of the season against West Ham.
Demonstrating against the owners.
Please don't boo the players, please get behind the players, which they then did. I mean, they don't suffer, what they regard as poor managers for very long. I mean, if McLaren gets off to a bad start... they'll want to get rid of him as well, won't they?
Yeah. Again, understandably, in one sense, in that it's a result-oriented business, and you have a honeymoon period, but not much of one. Especially, a set of fans who, as you both mentioned, remember the days of mid to late 90s, where Newcastle was up there and competing. So they have to do that again. At the same time, when I was up there and competing, I felt St. James's Park was at its best, at its loudest, when we actually went behind. Because they got behind the team. But I haven't been to St. James's Park, so I can't tell you what the atmosphere... I've been there for a while, so I can't tell you what the atmosphere is like.
It's very mooted compared to your days, Shaka. Believe me. It's,
people were saying that when John Carver was managing there in the early stages, when they weren't doing very well, you could actually hear people shouting from one side of the stadium to the other. When they were shouting abuse, just one single guy. That's how quiet it was.
I know. It's terrible, isn't it? But anyway, I have to see how it goes. I tell you what, I think it would have been an awful lot worse if Steve McLaren is endorsed as the manager. I don't think he could have taken that job had Middlesbrough won the Championship playoff final.
Maybe not.
I don't think he could, because it's like for managers who come to a club after they've managed a rival club, and I'm talking about, for instance, Alex.
Do you mind if I just ask Shaka one more question before we let him go?
No, I don't mind. I don't mind at all. As long as I can point out the facts to you, please go on.
Shaka, sorry, let me just ask you one final question. My apologies, Mr. Parry. Quite sometimes gets a bit over enthusiastic about the sound of his own voice. No. Here's the thing: who do you think will be the most successful of the two managers, McLaren or Bilic?
I'm going for Bilic because he knows our club well and he'll get the best out.
Great stuff. Okay. Shaka, a pleasure as ever to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed
for coming on.
Many apologies for Mike Parry's constant interruptions.
I don't want you going around making apologies for me.
Well, you constantly interrupt the guests.
Hang on. When I pointed out to Shaka, who was in mid-flow, that Sir John Hall was a Geordie and the previous owner of the club, when he was there, Shaka so much appreciated the information I gave him there. He then went on to point out that all the fans live within 50 miles of the club. You need a regional identity for it. Yeah. It was a salient point upon which he built.
Really?
So don't accuse me of interrupting our guests and trying to take over the minutes that are given over to them to give us their views, OK?
I don't know what that means.
Try and work it out, won't you?
From Hara, who says, Porky admitted today...
Is that the name, Hara?
Well, it's one of the names on a Twitter handle, which is too complicated to read out. Porky admitted today that how he'll jump the queue at the car shop as he did while buying muffins. Hashtag unsophisticated. Hashtag man of the people.
Yeah, well, I'm a man of the people. I don't remember jumping a.
You remember the muffin? You don't remember the muffin story from a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, but I didn't jump any queue.
You doing it.
I tell you what, the truth of that night is that there were a couple
Muffin Gate.
No, there were a couple of down and outs in there who were wandering around with open bottles of drink and booze, trying to find something to nick, and so I just sort of swerved in front of the queue, so as I didn't get sort of.
So you did jump the queue.
Impregnated by the filth of the down and outs who were floating around in the store looking to get into thievery.
Indeed. Yeah. Now, there's lots of things for us to discuss. We've got loads of time in which to do it. It will be Ask Porky coming up a little bit later on. We've got some great questions.
Well, this is the night. This is the night when I feel I give something back to the listeners by helping you solve your problems.
Yeah, it's good.
And I'm here to do that.
Yeah,
I'm here to do that. In fact, we did it live on Sunday night, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
At our theatre show in London.
Well,
so it's the usefulness of this is spreading.
It is indeed, and we'll be looking forward to it. So just send in your questions, hashtag them, Ask Porky at the 2 mics, and we'll have lots more coming up next.
Correct and will. Give the pass a slip. Step on the grid. Break your mama's back.
This is Talk Sport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. He's Mike Parry. There will be a podcast coming out a while later on this morning. Thanks very much indeed to Shaka Hislop for putting up with being constantly interrupted. And I'm sure we'll get Shaka back on very, very soon and see how Bilic and McLaren do. Any recognition of that song at all? That was one of your part of your era. That song.
I don't think it was.
No, you don't remember that?
I want to hear a bit more of it because I didn't quite.
Crack That Whip.
Crack That Whip.
By Devo.
Crack That Whip. Oh, I know what you're doing. Yeah, Crack That Whip.
You know what I'm doing?
Now, I'll tell you why that's been played.
You've never heard of Devo?
What? Devo?
Are We Not Men? You don't remember that one?
Was Devo not one of
these?
We
Are Devo. You remember that?
It's 4 men.
Yeah.
4 guys sing on a Britain's Got Talent type show.
No.
That's where they arrived, wasn't it? Wasn't it?
No.
Where did they come from?
No, they were banned from America.
Oh, really? Oh, do they play instruments?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they were a boy band.
It was sort of electronic punk. No, they were not a boy band.
I thought they were a boy band. But anyway, the reason why I mentioned that is that, now, you know that on one occasion you got me to do some sort of a dance, I can't remember what it was, the dub check or something, was it?
The dub check?
Yeah, the dub check,
that.
something like that. Yeah, there's a video around somewhere of it, and I felt idiotic because it's a young person's dance. The latest one is the whip. Did you know this?
No.
And do you know what? It's so simple. These kids these days have got no imagination, OK?
Yeah.
All the whip is, because I've had a look at it on video, I could do it easy myself. All it is...
You're not going to do it, are you?
Well, I'm not going to do it, but if I just move back from my chair, you just... your haunch... What's this? You go down on your haunches,
on your
is
haunches,
that right?
Yeah, squatting.
Squatting on your haunches.
Yeah.
Then you put your hand out.
Right.
So is my right hand out now?
Yeah, your right hand is out.
So imagine if I was
like riding a horse, then?
Well, a bit like riding a horse at the moment, but imagine I was 3 feet away from the steering wheel of my Merc, OK?
Yeah.
And now...
Just to go crashing through the windscreen because the brakes have failed.
Yeah, that's true. And now I'm turning the wheel of the Merc, OK? And that's the whip.
Is that it?
Dead easy.
Well, there's no kind of whip involved then.
I don't know what the whip bit about it is. But anyway, it's dead easy. But I thought I'd let you know that.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Well, maybe we'll get a video.
But it's just hit the UK. It's from America. What does it say here? It says, right, twerking is out. The question now for club goers is, can you crack the whip? The dance has gone viral on the internet. Well, that doesn't surprise me. Across the Atlantic... Anne-Marie Lennon, a street dance teacher at the City Academy in London, says it is spread to dance companies and classes. I've used the whip many times in my classes. I like my students to experience all the latest urban dance crazes. Yeah. Where do the kids do this whip? In nightclubs?
The kids?
Yeah.
Well, I would guess so. I don't know.
I think they do it on the street, actually, or something. I don't know.
I have no idea.
Anyway, it's good to know that here on TalkSport we keep up with the trends.
Yeah, it is very good. Yeah, Please stop referring to people as kids. Now, let's talk to Nick, who's a West Ham fan down in Brisbane.
Oh, hang on. Sorry, excuse me. Just
what do you mean, sorry?
The reason it's called the whip, this is interesting, is because the whip is slang for your car.
Is it?
So it is all related to grabbing a steering wheel in a car.
So it's nothing to do with the whip, then?
No, it's nothing to do with the whip.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we sorted that one out. No, it's not interesting at all, actually. Let's talk to Nick, who's a West Ham fan. Nick, very good morning to you. Sorry to keep you waiting.
Hello, gentlemen. Thanks for a very entertaining show this morning, or this afternoon, or whatever time it is there.
That's very good, Nick.
Thank you. Middle of the night here, but your morning. What do you make of this new appointment, then, of Slaven Bilic?
I'm actually really pleased about it. I know we had some big names attached to the lot potentially. I really think he knows the West Ham way. He's a smart man. He's got knowledge, and he comes with knowledge. I think it's always going to be hard for a team like ours to attract that really, really big name at the moment. And I think he's a big name on par with taking the club forward into a new stadium and sort of next 2 or 3 years ahead.
Nick, do you think it was very wise of the owners of West Ham, Mr. Gold primarily, I'm not sure about Mr. Sullivan, to start talking a few weeks back about West Ham being a big enough club to attract the likes of Ancelotti and the likes of Rafa Benitez? I mean, that is huge ambition to transform your club from an also-ran club into, a stellar European club that could be competing for the top trophies. And that doesn't do Slaven Bilic any good now.
No, of course it doesn't. But, I think it was last year or the year before when Sam Allardyce was there and they were talking about salaries, and he was, I think, in the top 10 or 15 paid managers in the world, and it was just ridiculous, I thought. So I guess they were probably thinking they've got a bit of money to spend, throw some money at one of those big names, and if they saw the opportunity and the timing was right, I think it was fine. I think it's going to be tough on Bilic, but the reality is he's a few divisions below those managers. He knows it, and he's going to come and prove himself there, I think.
Right. And what about the West Ham way? Because West Ham fans talk a lot about that. When Slaven Bilic played for West Ham, were they playing the West Ham way then, or what?
I think they were. I think when Bilic was there, like Ferdinand and Lampard and Cole and Carrick were coming through the ranks, and I think even though he was only there a year and a half, I think he probably had a really positive impact with Ferdinand in particular. I think he probably promotes a passing game and a bit more thought rather than the sort of direct approach that Allardyce had. So I think generally he's going to be whether he can produce it or not. I think he gets it, and he gets what we should be doing on the pitch.
Okay,
or wanting on the pitch, I should say.
And I mean, according to the Guardian this morning, they're going to spend a bucket load of money. They're going to try and get Loic Remy and some other players as well. But I mean, as I was asking earlier on to Shaka Hislop, I mean, is it likely that West Ham can ever get above a certain level? I mean, into the top 10 they've done fairly regularly with Sam Allardyce. Into anything up above the sort of the 8th position is going to be stretching it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think undoubtedly. I think if we can finish 8th, that would be brilliant for us. I think if we think about the next 4 years of securing like that 7th or 8th place, or maybe getting us doing like Southampton have done, and maybe having an awesome season 1 year. But I think the reality is that the guys who own that club aren't going to be owning it in 4 years. They want to put it on the market, and they want to. This is probably that higher. Otherwise, Allardyce would probably still be there playing that. Like, I don't think anyone in the Middle East or in the US is probably going to want to buy a club with Allardyce in charge, unfortunately.
Quite right. So, well, Nick, thanks very much indeed for the
thanks,
call.
Nick.
You can join in the debate, of course, 08717 22 3344. Quite a lot of tweets coming in here. Jack says, Porky means Il Divo, the opera group, the Bird Brain. That's who you're thinking of, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Il Divo.
That's what you said.
No, I said Devo.
Well, what is the difference between Devo and Il Divo?
Well, Il Divo are a bunch of kids, you say, who came up through some X Factor style thing, right?
No, excuse me, I'm talking phonetically. Phonetically, there's no difference between Devo and Il Divo. You should have made yourself clear.
Yeah, of course there is. Devo is 4 letters, right?
Yes.
Il Divo is 2 words.
Well, I'm sorry, but that is utter rubbish. That's like if there was a group called Beatles and a group called The Beatles, that's the difference, OK?
No, it's not.
But the normal...
Because Il Divo is D-I-V-O,
No.
And Devo, the band, is D-E-V-O.
Listen, if you said Rolling Stones or The Rolling Stones, you'd be talking about the same group.
No.
Any sensible person would think you'd be talking about the same group. So when you say Devo, and it's not Devo, it's Il Divo.
Yeah, that's a different band.
It's you who is guilty of thick-headedness for not making yourself clear as to who you are talking about.
No, I'm sorry.
Sometimes, Mike, your density frustrates me, and I don't wish to sound to the listeners like I'm getting frustrated at the paucity of breadth of thought that you have, but it sometimes happens.
Yeah, well,
I'm sorry, I get frustrated
about
about
it. From John, who says, you've got more rabbit than Sainsbury's, Parry. Why don't you give it a rest? #rent-a-gob.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah, well, there you are.
What I'm trying to do is inform the listeners.
Now, here's one from Woodenhead who says, I'm guessing it's called the whip because in the USA, whip is a slang name for a car.
I've just told you that.
Yeah?
I've just told you that. But anyway, maybe you sent that in before I made that clear, but thank you very much indeed.
And Peter says, maybe Porky can sell his crapped-out old Mercedes to the mug who bought his Vauxhall Viva.
Yeah, that's a good idea, yeah. I'm going to try and find him 30 years on.
One second-hand Mercedes for sale. Brakes don't work very well. I'm sure you can do it. Now, coming up in the next hour, we're going to be talking to a guest from South Africa, a man by the name of Graham Joff, who's going to tell us the latest situation on Oscar Pistorius. It's going to be Ask Porky as well.
I mean, that's an amazing situation.
We've got lots of other things to talk about. Have you seen the Stephen Gerrard story on the back of the Mirror, in which he's given an interview saying that he was in shock at the turmoil at the COP?
Yes,
Although,
that's right,
I think they might have slightly over-egged this one, because it is, as you know, Mike, this period of time when there's not a great deal of news around in the football world. Yeah. And apparently Gerrard's shock amounts to him saying, after he was told that Liverpool staff had been cleared out, what's going on?
Yes, that's right.
It's not exactly...
It's like what happened was he was told that, a couple of the coaches are going. All of a sudden he went, and he staggered back and hit the wall.
And then recovered.
What's going on?
Recovered enough to say, what's going on? I mean, I'm sure he'd be a bit more concerned about that, but he was cleared out, wasn't he?
Can I also point out that, there's been a bit of PR stuff involved here, because today's the day that Steven Gerrard was unveiled as part of the new BT team.
Oh, the Champions League lot,
which is the Champions League part. And I have to say, that's all very exciting stuff as well. And it was very funny today about people, who are involved with BT, putting out selfie pictures of, me and Gary Lineker, me and Steven Gerrard, and all that kind of stuff. Very interesting.
What do you mean, as if they shouldn't have been slightly as overawed as they were pretending to be?
It's just, look, it's exciting when you get any one of these new broadcasting operations and put them together.
You never sent out a selfie of you and me when we started working together again, did you?
I didn't want a lot of people to know. Yeah. I didn't want a lot of people to know that I'd slipped that far down the scale of my ambitions in life, that I actually wanted to work in the same studio as you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you understand that, do you?
I'm just looking
We've
at
got
Argos.
A great revolution here at Talk Sport, by the way. All sorts of new channels coming on.
Yeah, I know. It's going to be
big revolution.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the Argos catalogue for you here while we're...
the Argos catalogue? What are you looking at that for?
Yeah, because...
it was free with the newspaper.
It came inside the Mirror, and it was more interesting to listen to you. But also...
that's very nice.
No, because you were saying yesterday you want to buy a sort of special double-sized washing machine.
Yeah,
so I'm just looking for one for you.
Okay.
It says you save £200 on selected lines.
Have you found one?
Yeah, I think I have, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, have a look at that in the break, and maybe I could... I'll tell you what, maybe I could order a new washing machine before the end of tonight's show.
No, that'd be good.
How about that?
Why don't you order some new brakes as well while you're at it?
I think that's funny, do you?
I do, yeah. Well, I'm worried about you, genuinely. I think you're going to crash your car on the way home.
So you're making fun of the fact
that... Do you have to go down any steep hills?
You're making fun of the fact that I could be in a perilous position going home.
You could. It's absolutely right. And heaven forbid that would happen.
That's great.
TalkSport Extra Time. We are the Two Mics. There will be a podcast coming out in a little while. Shay has tweeted at the Two Mics. He says, "I'm a gooner, but I'm excited about Bilic going to West Ham because he's a rocker and he's always getting suspended or fined." And here's one from an Irish Liverpool fan. Irish One, he calls himself. "The wife came down the stairs. She said it's the Two Mics or me. Well, that's me and her finished." He says.
Well, I wouldn't advocate that at all. I mean, let's have some marital harmony, please. I'm going to tell you a bit later on in the show, by the way, about new methods of trying to save marriages.
Really?
Well, I'm on the case to try and help you.
Last night it was on astrology.
It was astrology, yeah.
Well, so you've got a new one tonight.
Yeah, there's other new things coming into play. Now, listen, before we go on to talk about the fact that I'm getting very upset with the number of fat policemen there are in this country, right? And there's
Why
evidence
get upset about that?
Well, because fat policemen can't chase after villains.
Right.
And if you can't chase after villains, that means the villains, with alacrity, just go committing crime because they know the police can't catch them.
Yeah, true.
Because what villains do is they don't go to places where they can be chased by police cars. They go to places where they can run off down alleys and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And if a fat policeman with a 56-inch waist can't keep up, the villain gets away.
What do you mean 56-inch waist?
56-inch waist.
I don't have 56-inch waists.
I'll tell you about that in a second. What I did want to say was we just heard from Tony Cottee, an outstanding young man who played for Everton, record signing at Everton, 2.1 million, signed by Colin Harvey, scored a hat-trick on his first goal in his first game.
Right, and why did he leave Everton then?
Well, he was there 5 years, so he did pretty well there, and then he came back south. But what I was going to say was, Tony made the point that, Slaven Bilic is very committed, and he'll want his players to give 100%. It drives me mad when I hear people say that. Does that mean that some managers don't expect 100% from their players and don't demand total commitment and aren't passionate about their jobs?
I mean, funnily enough, when you watch a football match like the one that we were talking about last night, England versus Ireland in Dublin, of course Roy Hodgson would expect 100%, but occasionally you see players who are clearly not giving 100%, and you say, well, that must mean that they're not frightened enough to give 100%.
Yeah, I think it's an absolute disgrace that any professional footballer who gets paid incredible wages, even in the lower leagues or even in the Championship, get paid incredible wages, can't give 100% commitment to their job during 90 minutes when they're on show each week. I'm not one of those who goes around saying, they only work for 90 minutes a week. They work every day. They work very hard. But during those days when they're working, the fruition of their week's work, training, planning, tactics, listening to their manager, watching videos.
That's all part of it, right?
Yeah, that should all come out in 90 minutes on a Saturday or a Sunday.
But what you don't want necessarily as well, because I think people get confused with this whole idea of giving 100%. You don't want people all running around like maniacs sort of chasing after the ball.
No.
And you want them to keep their shape. You want them to know what their jobs are. I mean, watching Lionel Messi, for example, the other night, quite a lot of commentators have pointed out, one of his great strengths is actually standing still.
Yeah.
He doesn't actually go anywhere, and he waits for the play to come to him.
Yes.
And he sometimes just walks around the pitch. But you might, if you were one of these old-fashioned England managers, go, well, look at him. He doesn't put in full 100% work rate.
Not at all. Not at all. His 100% is using brain power to commit himself to how most he can be useful to the team in that game. No, I mean, what I'm saying is, whenever I hear anybody say, he's a wholehearted player or gives 100% or demands, a manager who demands 100%. If there's a manager in this country who doesn't demand 100%, he shouldn't be a manager.
No, that's true.
Now, I'll get back to the Roy Hodgson thing, which we didn't really dwell on.
Yeah.
The day after that England-Ireland game, all of a sudden, Roy Hodgson saying, I've reminded the players of their responsibilities to international football.
Yeah.
Well, how come they're only all getting together again today, Wednesday? They had 2 days off after the Ireland game.
They shouldn't have had 2 days off.
Of course they shouldn't, because they go back then to rest mode in 48 hours.
Right.
Now they've got to gear themselves back up again. I just don't get it. But anyway.
Well, surely in the old days, not so much the old days, but even someone like Sir Alex Ferguson, if his team had performed like that, he'd have said, look, forget your 2 rest days. You're turning up at 7 a.m. at the training ground, and we're going to work through some things here, because that was a disgrace.
Do you know what it's like? When the England plane flies back, from Dublin to anywhere, I don't know where it would have flown back to. There might have been 2 planes, one to London, one to Manchester, because there's so many northern players.
And the FA pays for all that.
They pay for all that. But what's more is, Mike, what I'm saying is, when that plane lands, there's a queue of limos at the airport.
Yeah.
Usually sort of E-type Mercedes or something like that. Each player gets his own individual car. Yeah, that's right, E-Class. Yeah. And takes them off to their homes and all that. I mean, you're absolutely right. Roy Hodgson says, look, lads, that was so unsatisfactory. We've clearly got a lot of work on our hands.
They should have had a transit van waiting for him and take him straight to the training ground.
You're absolutely right. I couldn't have put it better myself. Now,
let me just say this to you. Ian has tweeted this, and he says, is it true that only 30% of Porky's brakes work, just like his heart?
Well, actually, at the moment,
it's not bad, is it?
That could be the case. I like that analogy. Well done, yeah. I wonder if, this could be a serious issue, Mike, because if I suddenly have to react very quickly to a situation involving my car because the brakes are on the blink, I wonder whether my reflexes are as good as a normal man's reflexes, bearing in mind only 1/3 of my heart works.
Well, that might be a problem, and I think what you may need to be careful about is your driving style may have to become, until such time as you get them fixed, slightly less aggressive. So don't race up to traffic lights and try and slam the brakes on. Don't slam them on as you come to a roundabout.
I don't have aggressive driving techniques. Anyway, by the time I leave here tomorrow, because after I've very happily, done 3 hours with yourself, I shall then go off to the Savoy for a bit of breakfast and all that, and I shall be back for the Mr. Brazil breakfast show. It's with Ray Wilkins, I think, in the morning, isn't it? It's great to see
Ray of Arabia.
Ray of Arabia. It'd be great to see him, and then have a look at the papers. I will then try and go home. Now, the idea that you can do anything more than 10 miles an hour through Greater London, even at 7:45 in the morning, and even going out of London, not coming in, is a joke. The whole thing is a joke.
I know.
And the fact that we're giving half of the road space now over to a super cycle highway, so people in Lycra wearing helmets and dark glasses and bigging themselves up as the next Bradley Wiggins can actually, have a whole cycle lane to themselves for 2 hours a day and no more. And that road is taken off the motorists who fund all transport in this country. Is a damn disgrace.
Well, one of the problems is...
we no need to go over that ground again.
I mean, I've told you that, all around here now, almost every road between here and where I live is down to a 20-mile-an-hour zone. And people are driving more and more slowly. They're actually driving some of them at 15. And I'm just looking for a tweet that I got sent in a little bit earlier. Somebody said it might be that they're actually trying to... here it is. I think I've just found it.
Trying to force cars off the road.
Dad. They've listened. Finally, they've listened and sussed how to reduce emissions. Wait till London's 20 miles an hour and the bikes are actually quicker. Well, London is 20 miles an hour, and actually the bikes can go quicker than cars now.
And do you know that a car travelling at 20 miles an hour throws out more poisonous fumes than a car...
Well, I'm not sure that's true.
It is, than a car travelling at 40 miles an hour. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. Yeah, I'm not convinced that it's correct.
And when a car's idling in a traffic jam because they deliberately create traffic jams because they want cyclists to have more road space than motorists.
Yeah.
And I don't know why all this is happening, by the way. This is a mad plot by, mad... politically motivated people to turn our society back. Turn our society back to almost to agrarian economic days.
Boris Johnson's very keen on promoting more and more cycling.
Yeah, but I think he's gone nuts as well. He wants to promote cyclists and all this kind of stuff at the expense of the economy of the City of London. Yeah. Because if you can't get into London, you can't do business in London. And a lot of people will say, well, I can't be bothered.
Well, of course, the alternative is public transport. But what anyone who uses public transport will tell you, and I'm one of them, I actually gave up using public transport to get to London because, one, it was unreliable. Yeah. Two, it started to not stop at the right stations.
And it's unpleasant.
And and it's not as pleasant as it could be. Let's put it that way.
Exactly.
And I'm not even talking about travelling during rush hour.
The other thing with Mr. Johnson, who has ambition to become...
Mr. Johnson?
Well, I don't know him as Boris,
Well, he's one of the people you call Mr.
Well, anyway, what I'm saying is he has ambition to become the Prime Minister of this country. Yeah. He also is in opposition to a third runway at Heathrow.
Yeah.
Well, you've got to be mad. You've got to be mad, Mr. Johnson.
Because he wants to build, Boris Island,
that's
doesn't he?
Dead in the water.
It's actually in the water. It's in the estuary, isn't it?
It's dead in the water.
I quite like that idea.
No, how long do you think it would take to build?
I have no idea.
15 years.
Well, in this
how much do you think it would cost?
I don't know.
Over 100 billion.
Yeah,
I mean, it's rubbish. Right. It's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, the point is that everything takes ages to build in this country, and it takes too long. I mean, if it was being built in the middle of the sea in New York City, it would be built in about 12 months.
Yeah, I totally agree, because they wouldn't have all sorts of planning objections, which go on for years and years and years.
I mean, down in Sussex, right, they're building an extension road, which is going to hook up between, the South Coast Road, the A27, and I think the A21, which has been badly needed for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I go past it quite often taking the kids to school, right? Yeah. And there is nobody ever working on it.
Yeah.
There's never anyone there.
No, and
if there
agree.
is anyone working, there's like one digger and 3 guys.
This is where I believe in benevolent dictatorship.
Yes, I know.
In planning laws, there should be benevolent dictatorship. And what should have happened years ago and should happen now is a load of people living around Heathrow Airport should get a knock on the door and be told, right, you've got 12 months to get out, we're taking your house, we're knocking it down. And we're,
12 months to get out.
Yeah. And we're building a third runway.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, the economies of Singapore, China and all the East will overtake this country.
Yeah.
And if people can't come to Heathrow to fly out to those emerging economies, they're going to go to Paris, they're going to go to Amsterdam, they're going to go to Frankfurt in Germany, or they're just going to go straight from America over to the East. So unless we improve Heathrow, we've got no chance. So I'm sorry, you're going to have to make the sacrifice for the country. We will
give you... come and live in your street. They could build some houses for them down there.
Why not? We will give you market value for your house, but you've got to go, I'm sorry. And Heathrow must, again, become the biggest and busiest airport in the world. Now...
look at the time, though. Look, have you seen the time?
What do you...
The time is of the essence.
I can read a clock.
I'm
going to have that clock taken out of the studio. Because I think it's such a distraction to you. You don't pay enough attention to the subjects we discuss in this show. Therefore, you can't apply what limited intelligence you have to the arguments.
No need to be rude.
All you're ever doing... Well, I'm not being rude. I'm being factual. All you're ever doing is staring at the clock.
Well, because
you're a clock watcher of the worst sort.
I'm responsible for making sure that we do everything on time.
You know what they call clock watchers in offices and all that?
Call them?
They call them the office sneak.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, I've never been the office sneak. This is Talk Sport. We are the two mics. Coming up, we're going to talk Oscar Pistorius with Graham Joff in South Africa.
On DAB Digital Radio and 1089 and 1053 AM.
The pressure's on now.
Relieve the itch. Talk Sport.
This is TalkSport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. He's Mike Parry. There will, of course, be a podcast coming out. So Ask Porky coming up in the next hour as well. So get your questions in at the two mics.
Right. Please now, do. Though, I'm here to help.
Yeah, you are here to help. We are going to now, though, touch upon a story which a lot of people are getting very, very excited about, not just down in South Africa, but elsewhere in the world as well. Oscar Pistorius, who was sentenced to 5 years in prison for killing his girlfriend, Reba Steenkamp, looks as though he might be being released on August the 21st.
Unbelievable.
He'd only served a sixth of his sentence, which is apparently possible in that part of the world. We're going to talk now to Graham Joff, though, South African journalist, who knows a bit about this story, and find out what the reaction has actually been. Graham, a very good morning to you. Welcome.
Good morning to you guys, Mike and Mike.
Yep. Thanks very much. So, I mean, this came as a bit of a shock to... I mean, obviously, the whole Oscar Pistorius trial and all the publicity surrounding it kind of polarised the country in many ways. How sort of vitriolic was the reaction to this news?
Mike, it's interesting. You know, it's what's amazing is how quickly 10 months has actually gone.
Yeah.
It seems like yesterday that he was actually just convicted of culpable homicide. If you watch the case as religiously as I did, and a lot of people that did as well, this doesn't come as a massive surprise, but it's wrong. It's I think the majority, the opinion of most of the public in South Africa, and I say the majority, and he's going to have his fans, he's going to have his followers. Even though it was only culpable homicide, someone has lost their life. A precious daughter has been lost to a family. 10 months And, for most of us that believe that he definitely knew who was behind that door, they think that he only served months. And then, I'm reading today about Chris Lewis coming out after 6 years for smuggling cocaine. The punishment doesn't fit. The punishment doesn't fit the crime.
Graham, what I don't understand, and I spent quite a long time in South Africa for the World Cup, and prior to that, we went the year before, stayed for a couple of weeks for the draw and all that kind of stuff. What I don't understand is the Rainbow Nation changed so beautifully when Nelson Mandela came out of jail and took over and apartheid was scrapped, and yet all this has all the hallmarks, the Pistorius situation, of a middle-class white man bucking the system and being given special treatment. Can you explain that to me politically?
I don't disagree with you at all about that. Nelson Mandela was just the most incredible person. I mean, his legacy, what he did when he came out of jail, he unified the country when they took over, the ANC government took over. And I just feel that, since he's gone, the country was on a downhill slide even before he went. But since he's been gone, the democracy and what he stood for, everything just seems like it's gone completely to the opposite. And there's no question that he's probably got favours while he was in jail, that he probably had a single cell, he was able to use the gym.
Exactly.
When you talk about middle class, Oscar certainly was a middle class. He was
upper class.
No question, he accumulated incredible wealth for his incredible ability. Let's not, I don't want to miss that point that he was an incredible athlete, an incredible performer.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, he became a very wealthy person. His uncle is extremely wealthy as well. And, here at the end of the day, you talk about 1/6 of his sentence for a family that's lost a precious daughter. And even though they say, June Stien come out this week and said that we've actually forgiven Oscar for what he's done. But at the end of the day, she doesn't believe that he should be getting out of jail so soon. I apologise for the noise.
Yeah, well, don't worry about that. What is the general feeling amongst the population of South Africa about the Pistorius situation? Because you've just said, without any fear or favour, you believe he knew who was behind the door. A lot of people around the world think that. So how can he still be benefiting from the judicial system that can't see what the mass of the population can see?
Yeah, that's the whole thing, We the majority of the public can see one thing, then you have the legal system that sees it another way. Does the legal system work properly? It certainly seems like it works in favour of people that have got money and can fund their way to get certain favours. As I said, it's hard to know what happened behind the walls of the jail, but it seemed like he was able to work out, he was able to do different things, had a single cell. Yes, he is a double amputee. Does he deserve special favours? These are questions that I can't answer. But at the end of the day, the majority of the public in South Africa believe that he has been given preferential treatment, and the punishment definitely doesn't fit the crime.
No, I'm just looking at a piece from The Guardian today, in which it starts off with a quote from somebody on Twitter who says, "Oh, how fast 5 years passes in South Africa. It feels like it's only 10 months." And I suppose the only question is, I understand that the state prosecutors are appealing the case. They're trying to get Pistorius retried on murder, or at least found guilty of murder. Where is that? And would that have any impact on whether he's released in August?
I don't think that's going to have any impact. I can't remember what date in August that he does get out on parole.
21st, I think it is.
I think you're 100% correct. 21st of August. There's nothing stopping that. 21st of August, he will be, I say, free man in inverted commas, because he'll be under house arrest. What that means, basically, I think he's allowed 1 free hour a day. What time of the day or where that is, I don't know how that all works. I guess there's a chip and he's monitored under house arrest. Come November is when the state will appeal against the sentence, and only then will we know whether or not there's another appeal or how long that may drag out for. But it could be a long show, whereas the rest of the world will be watching the South African legal system and how it maybe doesn't work.
Yeah,
indeed.
Absolutely right. Graham, thanks very much indeed for
Graham, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, I mean, people are saying that...
it's an incredible situation,
yeah, it really is. The whole kind of case only took, from the moment of the killing to him being sentenced and then released from prison. It's only taken 2.5 years, which seems an incredibly short period of time.
What do you think happened in that house that night?
I find it very difficult to believe he didn't know what he was doing. I find it very difficult to believe that he didn't kill her deliberately.
I think he had I think that the evidence during the trial showed he has an absolutely short fuse, short wit, can lose his temper in an instant. Yeah. Also had a sense of entitlement in life because of the incredible things he'd done as a para-athlete and overcome such adversity. Yeah. It gave him a superiority feeling, in my view. Yeah. There were even in the court evidence, there were occasions when he'd fallen out with girlfriends before who actually said they were frightened of his reaction. That's right. To his displeasure.
And he was also a gun freak as well.
He was a gun freak who actually let a gun off in a restaurant. He was with his mates,
firing it out the window of cars and stuff.
That's right. He was in a restaurant with his mates. He discharged. Can you imagine letting off a bullet from a gun inside a restaurant full of people, including children, and all this kind of stuff? So he was careless with the use of guns. Yeah. He had a short fuse. He didn't like his girlfriend saying no to him. Yeah. And he ends up in front of a door with his girlfriend missing from the bedroom, so where could she be? Right. Thinks there's somebody in the door and blows the door apart with 4 shots. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, but even circumstantially, you have to believe that he knew what he was doing.
And I mean, the thing is, the big question, I suppose, about what happens next, because people have said this before he even went to prison, was if he's still fit enough and capable enough, would he be able to run again? Would he be able to compete again in any other Paralympics, in any other kind of, paid for, appearances events, in some events around the world? But Pistorius' lawyer apparently told a newspaper last month that when he is released from prison, he hopes to work with children. People just were sort of falling about laughing, saying this is ludicrous, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I can't imagine that anyone would want to see him running again.
Well, I mean, even if we assume that the verdict of the court was right, I don't think a man who is so ill in his judgment of how to react to a situation he regards as dangerous should be working with any children, because that is ludicrous. The man is so highly irresponsible. And, in South Africa, there's a lot of guns around all over the place. Security guards wear them, police wear them, obviously. Private security people who patrol these estates have them. He's not a safe guy to be around when you look at the way he discharged a gun in a panic situation in his own home, let alone outside in playing fields with children and everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely ridiculous. Incredible story. We'll be keeping tabs on that one, of course, as it goes. We've got lots more to talk about, though, and it is Ask Porky coming up in a little while as well.
I want to talk next about fat policemen, please.
You do? Okay,
I want to talk about fat policemen.
You did mention it a bit earlier.
I want to talk about fat policemen.
All right, I don't know why you're obsessed with it, but we'll be talking about that. Talk Sport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. He's Mike Parry, of course. There will be a Two Mikes podcast coming out a little bit later on. Now, let me hear your explanation as to why you've become so wound up by this whole idea of policemen who are overweight.
We mentioned it briefly, but listen to this. Honestly, I am absolutely horrified. We were all brought up to respect policemen, When you walked down the street and you saw a policeman coming the other way, you thought, "Oh, have I done anything wrong?"
Well,
you were a kid,
obviously did, because you were always doing wrong things.
No, I wasn't doing wrong things.
You've already confessed to a life of, petty crime as a child.
Rubbish.
You did.
I didn't go shoplifting when I was a kid.
Well, everybody else did.
No, you did.
Yeah, well, I did.
What do you mean everybody else did? None of my friends went shoplifting. We weren't a thieving bunch of vagabonds.
You stole things from the pop truck that you said you were driving. You stole things from the bakery.
I did not. I did not.
You stole from the guy that was running the paper round.
I didn't. I had trading arrangements with other suppliers.
Oh, yeah.
Trading
arrangements.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Listen, this is outrageous. Yeah. What I'm saying is, as a kid, you respected the policeman.
I'm not surprised you were worried when you saw the cops.
I was brought up to respect the rule of law. Yeah. Now, listen to this. Britain has so many overweight policemen that belts, I mean, honestly, this is mind-boggling. Belts large enough for a 56-inch waist.
That's unbelievable.
56-inch waist are becoming hard to find. One store has even sold out of the brand, which is XXXL, that's 3XL version of the belt, that carries heavy equipment as well as holds up the trousers.
Oh, yeah, because they've got these kind of belts now, haven't they? They've got these things hanging off them. They've got pepper spray, a little pouch for something else. I don't know what else is on there.
Don't they have the handcuffs in a pouch?
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
That's right, yeah. The flood of demand comes despite a nationwide drive to slim down frontline officers. Mandatory fitness tests were introduced last September, and those who repeatedly failed them face the sack. You don't sack. Policemen don't get sacked. They're public servants.
Right.
No public servant gets a sack. Public servants just get shifted around, or they get made redundant and then re-employed.
If they've been involved in something which might otherwise be a sackable offence, they get suspended for a while, and then they kind of go off on health-related leave or something like that, don't they? And they never actually get sacked.
No, they never get sacked. Even if they're disgraced, they're allowed to retire on early pension, all that kind of stuff. Right, yesterday it was reported that Emergency Service Supplies, that is a uniform supply company, company, right, had sold out of the triple XL size that we talked about. Triple XL, that sounds like a secret agent in Moscow. Yeah. Of their, what's called the Portec SD1 duty belt. It's billed as ideal for officers with waist measuring between 50 and 56 inches. The next size
That's
down,
unbelievable.
The next size down was also in short supply. The company also offered outsized clothing for bulkier community sport officers. I mean, honest to God, it is outrageous that there are policemen being employed by the public purse who have waists of 56 inches. They are just fat people. Yeah. They're fat, overweight, obese, useless individuals.
Hang on, if they're that fat as well, can they even get into the cars and into the sort of, the situations they're meant to be getting into?
God knows. I mean, what about trying to wrestle a prisoner to the floor when he gets unruly in the cell?
They're probably not allowed to do that, are they?
Well, I mean, if a prisoner says I'm running off...
I suppose in one case that would be good, because they'd just have to sort of squash it, wouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Squash him against the wall.
3 years ago, a survey of officers in the Metropolitan Police, that's one that covers London, revealed that 64% of the force's payroll were overweight, obese or morbidly obese. I mean, this is an outrage. Yeah. And I'm going to ask you a personal question.
Go on, then.
What is your waist size?
38.
Right.
Yeah.
Mine is 40.
Is it?
Right.
Right.
Mine
why are
is
you
40.
always having a go at me for being obese then?
Well, because
if your waist size is fatter than mine.
I've got big bones, big hip bones.
Big
seriously.
Hip bones?
Yeah, I've got big hip bones.
Who told you that?
Well, I know that. In fact, actually, I'm doing myself down here. At the moment, I'm 38-inch waist.
Are you?
It oscillates because I wasn't.
Oscillates.
Because I wasn't.
What a terrible thought.
Well, because I wasn't able to walk a lot when I had my ligament knee injury.
When was that?
And my metatarsal.
I don't remember that.
Last year.
That was last year.
That was last year.
So we're now in the sixth month of this year.
It took up to March of this year to get fit again.
Okay.
I got back now from 40 down to 38. So I'm exactly the same waist size as you.
Funny that. Since you said you were 40 at the beginning of the conversation.
No,
you've already lost 2 inches just
but
after
what I'm saying is, OK, if you're 38, then it means that policemen are walking around in this country with a waist size 18 inches bigger than yours.
Yes.
I mean, that is outrageous.
It is ridiculous, isn't it?
It's just, how can this be allowed to go on? You've got to sack these policemen.
Well, it's ever since they came in with these new kind of revolutionary rules, which basically said that, they couldn't discriminate against people's shape or against anything else, so they have to hire whoever wants to be a police officer.
And
maybe they've got a shortage or something.
I mean, my campaign against fatness and obesity in this country is relentless.
Well, how's it going?
I'm telling you.
What's actually happened? I mean, ever since you launched this campaign, all we've heard about are how the policemen are getting fatter.
That's right.
That everybody else is getting fatter as well. Yeah. So it doesn't seem as if you're making much progress.
Well, I am, honest to God, trying to make public awareness a much greater thing in obesity because it's going to close down the National Health Service. And the problem is, it's all about the fact that we've lost our sense of discipline in this country. Yeah. I mean, for instance, apparently fat children in schools are now indulged by teachers. They are not, teachers are not allowed to say, don't you think you're getting out of shape? Yeah. They have to sort of treat them like victims.
Well, I'll tell you something else, which I can maybe even, if I can remember, because I took a picture of this. We got a communique from the school about how healthy eating was going to be one of the things that they were going to be looking into over the course of the next term, right? At one of the schools that my kids go to. And unfortunately, what they do is they import a company to make all the school dinners, right? So as much as they say, you're not supposed to put any chocolate in your kids', lunchbox or anything like that. If they want to have a biscuit, it has to be a muesli bar. They can't, Unfortunately, when you actually look at all the food that they produce and they give them for lunch, it's things like pizzas, it's things like pasta, which is not cooked particularly, low fat wise or anything like that. And in the end, we got this thing which actually donated. In fact, I've got it here. Here it is. Yes. Why is it important that my child takes part? This is the thing that was given to all parents, right? Yeah. Almost 1 in 3 children in England is overweight or obese by age 11. With so many children being overweight, an overweight child...
but are they
Hang on, listen to this bit. Listen to this bit.
Okay,
an overweight child may not look different from their friends. Therefore, we tend not to notice when a child is overweight and are becoming accustomed to heavier children as the norm. Yeah. Which is not true, actually. This is how they've convinced themselves that actually... I can look in the playground when my kids go to school and you can see which kids are overweight and which kids are not.
Can.
They're saying that you can't see it.
It's rubbish. I totally agree. Mike, the fat kid in the class was always there. If you read the Billy Bunter books, which I did as a kid.
I didn't read those.
I did, yeah. And he was he was portrayed as a bit of a bungling buffoon, you know what I mean?
But he was a likeable bungling buffoon.
A likeable bungling buffoon. Now, we had a kid in our class, right, all the time I was at the King's School, Chester, from the age of 8 till 18, and he was a doctor's son, believe it or not.
Was he?
But he was the fat kid.
And was his father fat?
No, his father wasn't. His father's name was Dr. Jordan, and this lad was Rob Jordan.
Don't give his name out.
No, it's all right. Don't worry about it.
Why give his name out?
Well, because it doesn't matter, Yeah. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. Okay. It won't matter. And
Why won't it matter? He might now be sort of, in some position of power in the Northwest.
Well, he was an Everton fan, so I used to see him at Everton games after we left school and all that kind of stuff. Right. But what I'm saying is, he was the fat kid in school, in the junior school, and then as we grew up and went through the teenage years and all that, he started to look like everybody else.
Okay.
You see what I mean?
So he lost the weight.
It was puppy fat and that kind of stuff, or whatever you want to call it. But the thing is, when he was a fat kid...
So by the time you left school, was he kind of just slim then, like everybody else?
He was a bulky lad, but I mean, he wasn't the fat boy anymore, you know what I mean? Because, body elongated and he didn't put a lot more weight on. But what I'm saying is that when we were 8 or 9, my mum and dad used to say things like, it's probably a thyroid problem.
Yeah.
That was always the excuse in those days.
That was the excuse, yeah.
And I said,
but it's not the excuse anymore.
What's that? No, it's just obesity.
Well, now, I mean, it's very clear that the children who tend to be the most overweight children that I see in primary school have parents who are the most overweight parents.
Well, fatness has now become a lifestyle. I totally agree. And during that stupid theory, did we talk about it a couple of weeks ago? That noise can now make you fat.
Yes.
If you live in a noisy area, you get fat.
You can be stressful. Yeah, you have to eat all the time.
Have
just
to eat
keep
all
the noises out.
Keep the noises out, and because your body wants to insulate itself against noise.
It's never seemed to affect people in New York City. I mean, New York City, probably the noisiest place I've ever lived in my life, right?
And
where
I
there
like
was where there was constant noise.
I loved it. When I used to stay with Ivor, and he had a 33rd floor apartment, didn't he, on about 58
well, you had your own apartment there, didn't you?
Yeah, but mine was a brownstone when I was up on 77th and 1st. When I used to go back and stay with Ivor. And I used to leave the windows open at night because I loved the sound of the horns and the traffic.
Yeah, it was like the city was alive all night.
Exactly, that's right, yeah. And that, I didn't get fat, so... Well, by the way...
you did, actually.
Talking about America, you will not believe what I have found out in my research. I found out in my research that the most valuable commodity in California now is water.
Yes, we've talked about this, haven't we? The drought.
No, Mike, it's worse. Water lorries, which are being sent into the state from other states for farming and all that, are now being hijacked on a regular basis.
Are they?
Hijacked and stolen. Water is being stolen.
Maybe it's to feed the stolen sheep.
People are digging up roads, right, and tapping into water pipes and drawing water off.
Really?
It's now become so valuable.
How bizarre.
It is unbelievable what's going on there.
Sounds like the script of Chinatown.
It is unbelievable what's going on there. Black market prices paid for water to supply desperate farmers is a huge scandal going on in California. And nobody's talking about it except the two mics.
Yeah, well, we'll be talking about it coming up next. Right here, we'll look into the light for a moment. This is Talk Sport.
Madness, they call it madness. Madness, they call it madness. It's plain to see that is what they mean to me. Madness, I call it gladness.
This is Talk Sport Extra Time. We are the two mics. We've got a great many things to talk about. Ask Porky coming up in the next hour, of course. I've got a text here from somebody who doesn't give a name.
Right.
81089 is the text number. Body armour adds to the size. I'm not quite sure whether it's a policeman sending this in, but surely body armour doesn't add another 6 inches to your waistline.
Or another 18 inches.
Well, because the body armour goes over the belt anyway.
Of course it does.
You don't wear it under the belt.
Of course you don't. That's utter nonsense. Honestly, body armour might give the overall impression of a bigger policeman than his bodily shape, but it certainly doesn't increase the size of his waist. That's absolutely right.
No,
now, listen, mate, I need to talk to you about something which is really, really important.
Okay.
Because
what, more important than a fat policeman?
It is more important than fat policeman. It's about the difference between madness, that was why we just played that record to introduce us back into the show, and genius is narrower than it has ever been.
Is it?
I mean, for instance, it was old Beethoven who cut his ear off, wasn't it?
Eh? No, it was Van Gogh.
Oh, Van Gogh, that's right. What did Beethoven do? He went deaf, didn't he?
Well, he went deaf,
That's right, okay.
He used to he cut the legs off his piano.
That's
he
right.
found that when he played the piano on the floor, that he could actually somehow feel the rhythm of the keys more than he could actually hear them.
I totally agree. And Brian Wilson, I totally agree with you. And Brian Wilson, of course, of the Beach Boys, had a beach installed inside his house, a sandpit, so that he could twinkle his toes through the sand while he was composing, because he didn't feel he could do it outside, and all this kind of stuff. Now, there's been a new survey. Lead researcher Carrie Stephenson. Of the genetic research organisation Decode, is saying the results of our new research shouldn't be a surprise, because to be creative, you have to think differently from the crowd, and we have discovered the gap between madness and genius is narrower than it's ever been. How about that?
I suppose the interesting thing is that most people who you might describe as being geniuses are actually probably slightly mad. And it's a question of how mad they are, I suppose.
Well, what it's all about is this. What the scientists have found out is that it's artistic people. So it's like you and I.
You think we're artistic people?
Well, I'm artistic.
Why do you think you're artistic?
Why am I
artistic?
artistic? Because I have a creative function in my brain.
You have what?
A creative function in my brain.
Yeah.
It's about creativity.
What?
Well, in the sense.
I mean, you're not really a painter, are you?
I've never tried that, actually. To be honest.
We've seen your drawings. Trust me, you're not a painter.
Yeah.
You're not really a writer.
I have been a writer, and I've written award-winning poetry.
You're not a poet, and you've written some crappy books.
Excuse me, I've written more books than you have.
Yeah, well, because I've said to you before, I have a critical faculty which does not allow me to publish anything until I'm happy with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the rubbish you write, you'd never be happy. But I've written bestsellers, right?
I do admit that I've never penned the words.
Exactly.
The sky was inky black.
Yes.
And, the snow was as white as
I can only write down what Mr. Brazil tells me, can't I?
Right.
Now, it's all very well trying to
You're not musical, are you?
Sorry?
You're not musical.
Well, I've never tried it. I don't know.
Well, so in what way are you creative, then?
Well, I'm creative in the sense that I tend to plough the furrow of lateral thinking and harvest the results.
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt that you have some pretty amazing pieces of inspirational thoughts.
Well, there you go.
But, that doesn't necessarily mean
I do have inspirational thought.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you're creative.
I do have inspirational thought. I noticed on the radio tonight, John McCready was trying to steal my idea about widening goals and raising the crossbar by 6 inches. Yeah. So
that's 6 years too late.
That was a creative thought. I have other creative thoughts about the way things should be done. Yeah. Cars should be driven around backwards in snow because you get a better grip on the back wheels. But that's all by the by.
But that doesn't make you a genius, does it?
Well, I'm talking about lateral thinking. Yeah. Now, what scientists have found out, the autistic types are more likely to suffer, the twists and the frustrations of the genius madness situation than those with what scientists call, a little bit insulting this, down-to-earth jobs.
Really?
Okay?
Right.
And down-to-earth jobs are defined as builders. What else is a down-to-earth job? Farming.
Yeah.
Farming,
How about
building.
shepherds?
Sorry?
How about shepherds?
Shepherds, that's a down-to-earth job. But the non-down-to-earth jobs are things like acting, which is said to be creative, okay?
Yeah.
Actors, comedians and writers, so I am including that as a writer.
Oh, okay.
And writers have spoken about...
Is that what you call yourself then, a writer? I mean, if you were asked to describe your profession, what's your profession?
I am a communicator.
A communicator?
Yes.
I see.
I communicate through this microphone here. I communicate through the pen.
Yeah.
Because I write things for, newspapers and that sort of stuff, as well as writing books.
With a pen?
Yes, with a pen.
Well, they must get really upset with it.
Well, you know what I'm talking about.
You know what I'm talking about. Written in longhand.
You idiot. It's a keyboard.
Script.
It's a keyboard, but it's called the power of the pen, isn't it?
Well, you used to write a column, didn't you, for the Portsmouth Bugle?
I used to write a column for the Sunday People.
And for the Sunday People. What happened to that?
And well, the thing is, it
wasn't renewed.
No, I didn't want it. I couldn't do it. I didn't have time to do it any longer. It's as simple as that.
Right.
And but no, I don't know why we're talking about me. We're talking about here about actors, comedians, writers often struggle with mental illness. Okay,
right.
They do suffer from something sometimes called bipolar disorder.
Yeah.
Although in a recent survey I read, there's a dispute among scientists about whether bipolar disorder is actually a recognisable condition.
It seems to be one now.
But it's only got named as bipolar disorder in the last few years, apparently.
That's true, yeah.
Before that, it was like sort of, I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
But that's what
certainly
it's known.
a lot of creative people do suffer from that because, in the end, I mean, Stephen Fry is one of them, and you have these very dark periods where you feel like you can't do anything, and then you have other periods when you're incredibly active and you just feel like working all the time.
I see what you mean.
But I'm interested in their definition of genius and madness.
Well, this is what I'm saying. Now,
maybe we can find out how close to one or other of those things that you are.
Apparently, the people who have the biggest problem differentiating between madness and genius are people in Iceland.
Right.
Because of
Iceland?
in Iceland, yeah. Because Icelanders who are professional actors, dancers, musicians and all that... also suffer from a confusion in the brain about what season it is, how many days of how many hours of daylight there are, how many hours of darkness there are, whether their brain should be accommodated by all lightness or all darkness.
So
and
they're
all this
affected
kind of
by
stuff.
the seasons, then.
Seasons, yeah, that's right, yeah. But salesmen, fishermen, and builders don't have a problem at all. Okay. And there is no actual definition of what is madness or what is genius, but in the journal Nature Neuroscience, it says it's becoming increasingly difficult to tell one from the other.
Is it?
Yeah, increasingly difficult.
Well, I think as you know, even though society has changed over the years, I think society has actually become more conformist than it used to be. I mean, like in the 1960s, when the music business was kind of becoming very, very, very alternative. Yeah. People were coming up with new ways of making music. Rock bands were forming literally every 5 minutes. Yeah. Art was becoming very kind of, different. Well, I mean, nowadays, people are much more conformist. Young people nowadays, for example, you've talked about this before, where they don't seem to drink as much as their parents. That's right. They don't want to go out and have a great time as much as their parents did. They don't want to discover anything beyond the age of 25. Remember we did that study where they all are very happy where they are, and after the age of 25, they're stuck where they want to be. Well, and
funny you should say that, but I mean, you see research all the time now about did we all form the decisions that rule our life now at the age of 25? Yeah. But let's examine it ourselves, right? For instance, as everybody knows, I would regard John Lennon as the greatest ever musician of my lifetime.
You would.
And a genius. Right? And I don't think anybody would argue with that. This man,
maybe not.
This man could write songs like you and I would eat sandwiches.
But would he regard himself as a genius? Probably not.
He definitely did. Definitely did.
You think?
He told his Aunt Mimi, and I funnily enough, only the other day, because I sometimes listen to the John Lennon tapes, about the interviews that are available. And he said, I told my Aunt Mimi when I was 15 I was a genius. Right. She started throwing away my poems and my cartoon drawings. I told her, Aunt Mimi, don't throw those away. One of these days they'll be worth millions because I'm a genius. Yeah. And he also said...
But that's the kind of thing you say when you're 15. Well, I bet when he was 35, he was much more kind of... I don't know, self-critical.
He was saying this when he was 35, funny enough. In fact, he was exactly that age, 5 years before he was killed. Yeah. And what he said he knew throughout his... And I have this feeling as well. He knew throughout his...
You think he's a genius?
No, he knew throughout his teenage years he was a genius. He just wasn't quite sure what he was a genius at. Yeah. That was the problem.
So you're saying you've always had those same thoughts?
I still have that problem. I know that within me there is some genius streak, but I haven't found out what it is yet.
But how can you tell?
I just know. I mean, for instance, I'd started to take violin lessons a couple of years ago, and then I didn't have time to continue them. Yeah. But I felt a very, very great spark of resonance when I had a violin in my chin.
What about a spark of resin?
Yeah. No, don't be silly. I
know a bit about violin playing because I played the violin for many years.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Well, so I've told you before, I've got certificates from the Royal Academy.
So if I gave you a violin now and a bow, you could make a noise?
I could probably play something.
Make a sound.
I haven't played for a long time. But
I
played the violin from the age of 6 to about the age of 14.
Did you? I didn't know that.
Yeah, well,
amazing.
That's why I tell you, we've spoken about it. I told you about my certificates and my musical kind of prowess and my perfect hearing, because I used to have to do an oral exam as well. Yeah. And you always used to get 18 out of 18, where they basically play you a piece of music and you have to tell them precisely what key it's in.
Take all that with a pinch of
salt. I can do all that.
But anyway, look.
Well, I've got papers to prove it.
Yeah, well, hang on. Let's get on with the argument here. What I'm saying is...
Yeah, let's talk more about you.
No, let's talk more about John Lennon. If we accept that John Lennon is a genius, was he also...
Well, I'm not sure we do.
Was he also mad?
I don't think he was mad, no. I don't think that's
so anybody who invents baggism is not mad then?
No, I don't think so.
Baggism means getting away from the world by climbing into a bag and getting somebody to tie the bag up you're inside.
That didn't make him mad. That was all driven by the fact that he couldn't handle the excessive fame that he'd suddenly encountered without any kind of warning. And suddenly he was a man that couldn't do anything at all without the press being all over his back, without the...
Do you think sitting in a bed for a week with your wife-to-be in Amsterdam is not mad?
No, not at all.
Asking for peace?
No. You see, you're very conservative about these things. Yeah. You think anyone that does that is clearly off their rocker, when in fact what he was doing was making a point.
I didn't say he was off his rocker.
No, you're saying he's mad.
No, I was asking the question.
OK, well, if he was mad, then you would say he was off his rocker, I would say, right? The reason he did that was because he realised he was a very famous personality. He realised if people are going to be watching my every move, I might as well do something which is going to be worth doing. And so he thought, well, if I'm going to demonstrate about the Vietnam War, or I'm going to try and convince people to be more peaceful, then that's a better way of having them all look at me. I think it's very logical.
Let's take another man we all accept as a genius, right? George Best. Right? Do you accept George Best as a genius?
No, I don't think so. Why? He was a very good footballer.
Well, in my view, he was a genius because he was so much better at his job than anybody else in that profession. I mean, George Best used to go drinking in Annabelle's until 4 or 5 in the morning with our old mate Ross...
Ross who?
Ross, who used to be the diary king at the Express.
Oh, Ross Benson.
Ross Benson, yeah.
Don't give his name.
Sorry?
Don't give his name away.
Well, Ross is dead.
Yeah, I know that.
He took his son to a Chelsea game.
But he's still got people who loved him who are still alive.
Well, I have huge respect for Ross. I loved him. He was a great guy.
Yeah.
He was a great correspondent. He was our correspondent in California when we were in New York. But anyway, he took his son to a Chelsea game, and they came home and, good night, went to bed, never woke up again.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, all those things died in his sleep.
Yes.
Terrible tragedy.
I know.
But anyway, he used to go out drinking with George Best till 5 or 6 in the morning on a day when George Best would then have to appear at Craven Cottage
but that
in the
doesn't make
afternoon
George Best a
for
genius,
playing for
though.
Manchester. But he scored 3 goals.
Yeah, but it doesn't make him a genius.
Well, I think it does.
No.
Now, if that's
it
right...
means that he was able to go out as a young man, get completely bladdered, and then do his job.
I think that anybody who does that is a genius.
Really?
Now
that's
the point
an
is...
interesting new definition of being a genius.
So was George Best mad?
No, I don't think so.
He did some mad things.
He did some mad things. We've all done some mad things. It doesn't make you mad. I mean, what's your definition of madness is what?
Well, being extraordinary and believing that your extraordinary behaviour is normal.
No. Do
you think that making love to 6 women in the same night is normal?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
No,
if you're George Best,
if you're
George Best, it's normal.
Don't be ridiculous.
If you're Mick Jagger, it's completely normal.
No,
I think the definition of madness.
Well, is Mick Jagger a genius?
I don't think
is Mick Jagger a genius.
No, I don't.
Who do you define as genius then?
I'm
so
not
far,
really
we haven't
sure.
got one genius out of you. Name me one genius.
I think Stephen Hawking might be a genius.
Well, that's a bit difficult because Stephen has so many physically challenging problems
how does that stop him being a genius?
To cope with.
Being a genius is in your mind. It's not about your body.
No, I agree with that. But what I'm saying is...
And madness is about your inability to be able to control, I think, your behaviour in such a way that you're not doing things because you want to do
So you
them.
think Peter Sutcliffe's mad, do you?
Yes.
You do?
Yes,
right,
I do.
OK, well, I'm not going to argue with that.
But he's also not a genius.
No, exactly. And nowhere near to being a genius. No. So who is the person we most know, living and alive, who is on that borderline between genius and madness?
I don't know. I mean, it's a very interesting argument.
Well, who?
Very interesting argument.
Is it Stephen Fry? Is it Stephen Fry?
No, I don't think he's a genius either.
Right, OK, do you think he's mad?
No.
No, but he suffers from bipolar disorder.
He suffers from depression, yeah.
That's a form of madness, isn't it?
No, it isn't. No, it's a form of mental illness.
I think in this report that I gave you, that is sometimes classified as one of the pressures of genius, which hurts people.
Yeah. I think there's no doubt that creative people can have suffer from different kind of issues around around the way that they think and
what
they
do. You think David
do.
Hockney is a genius? I do.
I think he's a great artist.
I think he's a genius.
I don't. You see,
I think David Hockney's a genius.
I mean, if in your world you would denote many people as a genius, wouldn't you?
I think Noel Gallagher's a genius.
No, I don't think so either.
Well, I mean, he can do things.
He's very talented. I think you're
20 or 30
talent.
million other people can't do.
Yeah, but you're confusing talent with genius, aren't you?
No. Extreme talent is genius.
Yeah, maybe so. But I mean, extreme talent is not the same as just talent.
I mean, do you think Bjorn Borg was a genius?
No.
Because I do.
No.
I do.
So you think like everybody's a genius, basically?
No, I don't. No. I've only named half a dozen people in a world of billions and billions of people. I've only singled out half a dozen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about someone like, I don't know, Pythagoras?
Pythagoras?
Yeah. Was he a genius?
I didn't even know he existed. I thought he was a mathematical equation. What are you laughing at?
What do you think came up with Pythagoras' theorem?
I thought it was Archimedes or somebody like that who just named it Pythagoras. And it sounded good.
Yeah, because he had a dual personality.
No, well, not.
And he thought, I know, I'll come up with a theory and name it after somebody that doesn't exist.
I don't think Pythagoras is a bloke. Anyway, I think you're winding me up.
No, I'm not winding you up.
Well, go on, show me a picture of him.
I'll show you a picture of Pythagoras. Yeah, I'll show you one in a minute.
You've been taken in.
Look into the light for a moment. I don't really have any answer to any of that.
Exactly. What was Pythagoras' first name then? What was it?
Never mind. We're running out of time. We're running out of time. This is TalkSport Extra Time. We're going to be talking transfers coming up in this hour as well, whatever the latest of rumours are. Russell Hargreaves will be joining us. A couple of tweets to read out to you, Mr. Parry. Mark says this. If his first name was Chicken and Mushroom, Mike Parry would know who Pythagoras was. That's quite good, isn't it?
What's that mean?
Well, say Chicken and Mushroom Pythagoras.
Chicken and mushroom Pythagoras.
Yeah. Well, you don't get it. Chicken and mushroom pie.
Oh,
Pythagoras.
I see. Okay. All right. Well, I'm sorry, but that's a little bit of reduced humour for me. Mine's usually on a high level.
You know what I mean?
Thomas
says, I think you're a genius, MG, to put up with that madman Porky every night.
What do you mean? I'm always trying to state the facts about scientific research and development, that's all.
Yeah, and then here's one from CLC who says, definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, i.e. working every night with Porky porky.
Oh, yeah, that's very nice, isn't it? It's have a go at porky night, just because I'm trying to point out to you that the world needs to be challenged, and the theories that make the world work need to be challenged all the time.
Yes,
that's all I'm telling you.
And I think that's very good. And
Exactly.
I have no doubt in my mind that you're a very creative person, but I just think in the end, just to kind of sum it all up, that I think the difference in definition of genius is where we're falling down here, because you think a lot of people who are very talented are geniuses.
Well, yeah, but you can't name one genius for me.
Well, because I'm not sure there are. I'm not sure what the definition
So you're basically saying genius doesn't exist then?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, Stephen Hawking's about as close as I can think of.
Do you think Leonardo da Vinci was a genius?
Yes, I think he was, probably, yeah.
Why?
Yeah, because he did something which was so different from what everybody else did.
What did he do?
Well, he was a creator of all manner of things. He invented a helicopter before anybody even knew that helicopters could fly.
He built bridges.
Yeah, he built bridges.
Painted the Mona Lisa.
Exactly.
That is incredible.
Yeah, so he did a whole series of things.
Do you think Michelangelo was a genius?
I think I'm not so sure.
I think he was.
Possibly.
I think he was.
Yeah.
But modern living day genii, you're saying that apart from Stephen Hawking, there aren't any.
Well, no. Well, I'm not saying that.
What about Steve Jobs?
Steve Jobs, possibly. Yeah, I think Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs changed the world with his inventive brain.
Yeah.
He invented electronic devices nobody else had ever come across before. That's got to be genius in my mind.
Yeah, true. But I think that's the problem, is everybody's got a different definition of it. I don't think somebody who's a particularly talented sportsman necessarily is a genius unless he can do something that nobody else can do.
Well, I think George Best did do things nobody else could do.
He was just very good at football.
Yeah, and in his generation, of his day, there was nobody else like him. Maradona was around a little bit later, but on his day, George Best in the mid-60s... I never rated Pelé as good as people do rate him. Pelé was the first.
Yeah.
And he was 17 when he burst onto the scene, but he never played in Europe to test himself properly. The 1,000 goals he scored, at least 700 of them were scored against teams which wouldn't get into the English Premier League, the English League Division 3.
Yeah.
Seriously. Some of these, our own Brazilian correspondent said only last night when you were talking to him, a lot of the games in Brazil are against teams which are of very, very limited quality.
Right.
And those are the sort of teams that Pelé scored most of his goals against.
All I'm saying is that I think it's a mistake to confuse talent with genius, that's all. And
listen.
I think it's a word that gets used and overused, in fact. Let me just read you one more tweet before we go any further. Frazzle says, a recent survey has shown that Mike Parry is obsessed by recent surveys. Which I think is quite clever.
But that's because I keep in touch with what's happening in the world.
Yeah.
If I wasn't up to date with the new research and the new theories coming out in the world, we'd all be going backwards. Now look, I want to talk to you about oceans. It's World Oceans Day today.
Is it?
Yeah, and can I tell you that there is a worry about oceans?
Right.
And
what's the worry?
Well, did you know about a thing called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch?
I didn't know about it, but I'm sure you're going to tell me.
Right.
I probably have a good guess, though. This is where all the ships dump all their stuff, right?
Well, I'm not sure they dump all their stuff, but I think because of the way that currents swirl around the globe...
I've heard of this.
The globe, it all ends up here. And the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, right, it's a name given to a vast area of plastic debris in the Pacific, which may extend to over 5 million square miles.
Goodness me.
Right?
Yeah. I think I've seen pictures of it, actually. It's horrendous, isn't it?
It is horrendous. Now, do you know what a lot of it's down to?
Right.
Now, you know all these supermodels. Now, Miss Kate Moss has been in the headlines over the last 2 or 3 days because she allegedly got involved in an altercation aboard a jet. And she had to...
She denies that she was drinking vodka. I think I've seen a piece in one of the papers this morning where she's defending herself, saying that I prefer to have a salad on a flight than a vodka.
Or something like that. But anyway, the people who run the company EasyJet found it sufficiently alarming to ask the police to meet the flight.
Yeah.
And she was spoken to by some police officers, but not accused of any offence, not arrested or anything like that.
Let's hope they didn't have 56-inch waists.
Yeah, well, exactly. The coppers who met her, yeah. But anyway, look, the reason I say this is because one thing that is destroying our oceans is a thing called microdots.
Oh, yeah.
Or microbeads. They're honestly called microbeads.
Yeah.
And these microbeads are present in all cosmetics in the world.
Are they?
So women, as you know, spend tens of billions of pounds on cosmetics every year.
They do.
These get flushed into our, disposal systems and all that kind of stuff. They end up in the ocean, and they are destroying oceanic life.
So are these things so small that, generally speaking, you can't see them, say, in lipstick or in blusher or whatever they are?
You can't see them, right? It says cosmetic brands harm maritime life by delaying the removal of tiny pieces of plastic from their products. The plastic microbeads are used in things like facial exfoliants, body scrubs and toothpastes, OK? And toothpaste is particularly dangerous because you swill your mouth out and you spit water into a sink and it goes back into the sort of system.
Yeah.
They're too small to be trapped in sewage systems. They end up in the sea.
Right.
They're ingested by plankton, molluscs and seabirds.
Molluscs?
Molluscs, yeah. What are you laughing at?
Molluscs.
Well, they're molluscs, aren't they? They sit on the bed of the... What are you laughing at? I don't know why you're laughing.
It's not molluscs.
What are molluscs, anyway? Are they like shellfish?
Yeah, they are like shellfish, yeah.
And they're
molluscs.
And they sit around in these little sort of pools, don't they, on the edge of the coast and all that kind of stuff. Right.
Yeah.
Right, well then...
Well, and also in the rest of the sea as well.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, yeah, exactly. Now, they then make their way up the marine food chain and then are consumed by humans, OK?
Yeah, right.
And these microbeads are less than a millimetre in diameter.
Right.
Sounds quite big, that, to me.
A millimetre in diameter?
Yeah, less than a millimetre in diameter. They also absorb and concentrate toxic chemicals from seawater, which means they're slowly poisoning the creatures who eat them, OK?
Right.
And apparently all these conservation groups have been campaigning for years to persuade manufacturers to replace the microbeads with natural exfoliants, like nut kernels, OK?
Yeah, right.
Now, obviously it's World Oceanic Day. I told you this is why I latched onto this. And what I'm saying is, and the reason I started talking about Kate Moss is, most of these cosmetics are promoted usually by the world's top models.
They certainly are.
That's how they earn their money.
So are you saying, because I was under the impression that this kind of garbage area that you were talking about earlier, what did you call it? The Sea of Garbage or whatever it is?
No, it's called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch.
Right, OK. I thought that was mostly caused by the sort of the cruise ships that dump all of their rubbish overboard, basically.
Well, I'm not
sure.
And
it was like floating. It wasn't things that had come from the water systems of the world. That it was something that had come from cruise ships just being irresponsible.
Well, I think what I'm trying to say here is that the oceans are in a dreadful state. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've got the microbeads, which are poisoning sea animals. We've got the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is over 5 million square miles.
Yeah.
Half of the world's population depend on the ocean for their primary source of food.
Yeah.
Do you realise that?
Yeah.
Half of the world's population depend on the ocean for their primary source of food. That means half of the people in the world eat fish and nothing else.
Well, it means that half the people of the world, I guess, live on coastlines.
Yeah, but I mean, they're probably pretty sort of basic native type people, haven't they? Because people live.
What about people living in Eastbourne?
Well,
that's a bit harsh.
No.
Basic native types.
No. I don't mean people in Eastbourne are basic native types. What I'm saying is the people who only eat fish must live in places like Samoa and places like that, because people in Eastbourne and on the Pacific Coast Highway of America import meat to eat as well as the fish they catch in the sea.
Right.
In fact, very few people in Eastbourne go around catching fish to eat for their dinner.
I don't know.
And neither does anybody on the Pacific Coast Highway.
Yeah.
I mean, the days of us having to go out and, catch a few fish for dinner are long gone.
I think you'll find there's a lot of Californian fishing boats, and a lot of fishing boats that go out from Sussex and fish for a living.
Yeah, but people don't fish from the pier, do they? Catch a couple of salmon for dinner, you know what I mean?
And there's any salmon in the
So what I'm saying is, once again, I'm raising the alert, and this is another campaign which I really perhaps will need to
You haven't got time for another campaign, surely.
We've got to... Yeah, thank you, that's right. And I take that as a compliment, by the way, when the campaign siren burns. We've got to clean up the world's oceans.
Yeah, well, look at the time first, because we're out of it.
Clean up the world's oceans.
Yeah, we haven't got time to clean up the world's oceans. We're going to talk about transfers. We're going to talk Ask Porky coming up very shortly as well.
Absolutely.
This is Talk Sport.
On DAB, digital radio, and 1089 and 1053 AM.
A terrific performance.
Turn of pace and eye for goal.
Shout about it.
Talk Sport.
Talk Sport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. He is Mike Parry. It's Ask Porky time very shortly, and we've got a great host of questions for him.
Really?
So if you've got any more that you'd like to put in,
please
by
do.
all means, hurry up.
I'm here to help.
At the two mics. Matt says, Billy is very happy that it's World Oceans Day, even though it's actually on the 8th of June, which is the day after tomorrow, I think, isn't it? And Dave the Milk says, a two mics classic, I never rated Pele.
Oh, no, I didn't say that.
Yes,
no, I didn't say that. Yeah. No, sorry. Because you cut me short, what I was going to say is I never rated Pele as the greatest ever footballer.
Okay.
I think there are others who come ahead of him.
Right.
Right?
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Like Lionel Messi, for instance, obviously in the current era.
Yeah.
Like maybe Maradona.
Yeah.
And, in my view, George Best.
Right.
And also, Cruyff.
Yeah. Well, here's one. It just shows you how different people's opinions are. Stephen says this. Yeah. Pele was overhyped. Maradona was my best ever. Best British and Irish. Paul McGrath, John Terry, Alan Shearer, Stephen Gerrard and Bobby Moore.
Yeah, all great players.
Yeah, but none of them geniuses.
Well, Bobby Moore is apparently a genius. When I say apparently, I saw him play a few times. And, of course, he captained England to the World Cup in '66. And you ask any expert these days, they'll say that the amount of space and time he made for himself in the game did put him in the ranks of genius, alongside Franz Beckenbauer.
Yes. Well, we shall see. It's one of those arguments you could go on about forever, really, isn't it?
Yeah. One of the things about life today is when you're being brought up, the ambition of what you want to be when you grow up and all that. Football's not really anything that the middle classes aspire to, certainly not middle-class parents, right? But do you know what's happening? Do you know what's happening? I see it every day now, more and more, because, I have a niece and a nephew and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Some children are brought up now in such comfortable middle-class circumstances, quite seriously, and they go on that...
it's true.
They go on that conveyor belt, which is, maybe private school, junior, and then they either pass an exam or they go to a good secondary school. They go to university. Yeah. They then go on a gap year. Yeah. Gap year is funded by their parents, right? They then come back, and then they might start living at home for 1 or 2 years while starting their career. Yeah. And do you know what? By the time they're in their mid-20s or 27, they have completely lost the ability to become independent in life.
No, I think that's right. And one of the problems...
Completely lost it.
One of the problems as well is that nowadays it's actually harder and harder for younger people, to find the right kind of job to do. Whereas when you and I were kind of entering the profession of whatever it was that we ended up doing, you kind of knew where you had to go, you knew what your kind of goal was.
Yes.
For example, so many people now want to be journalists, right?
Yeah.
We listen to... I've got friends who are journalist lecturers, Sandy, who does a bit of it here as well. And so many people who want to be journalists now in the world for one reason or another.
They go on media courses.
They go on media courses. They're the most kind of, hotly contested courses to get into universities. And none of them, mostly, 1% of them are going to actually make it as journalists.
It's true.
And then a further probably 1% of that number will make it to a very good journalistic job. And an awful lot of them will never get to where they want to go.
No, I totally agree. And the other thing is, and even better than averagely well-off middle-class parents can't solve this problem. If people want to head to London to work... They've got no chance because they can't afford somewhere to live.
Well, if their parents are rich enough, they end up buying them a house.
Well, this is about what I'm about to say. But you know what? It also keeps children in the provinces from moving to London because it is easier to live back with their parents. Yeah. Now, that makes them even less independent than we used to go live in houses and pay £10 a week and all that kind of stuff and all live together and all that kind of stuff and do all that. And I don't know, some parents just don't want their children to do that these days. They don't want to push out like that. But I
think that's the point, because, your parents weren't well off. My parents certainly weren't well off.
No.
And so you kind of pushed out of the family home in order to make something of yourself.
I know.
That was why you did it.
A friend of my nephew, right, he has a mate, right, who really is just floating around, doesn't really know what he wants to do, you know what I mean? So he goes up to London to try one profession, doesn't work, he comes back and lives at home again. Then he embarks on another pseudo-career on, I don't know, some trainee thing in banking or something like that, goes back up to London, lives in a flat paid for by his parents, that doesn't work out, he goes back again and lives at home. Third attempt, I think I'll start my own business. Yeah. Father lends him some money, you know what I mean, to start this business in IT because he's an IT wizard and all that. That doesn't work. Yeah. He's back at home again. And what I'm absolutely saying is, the kid's directionless because everything he tried and failed at was supported by his parents.
And as long as you've got that safety net,
exactly,
then you will never actually stick at anything, will you?
Exactly. The safety net has just been far too comfortable for the young man who's now getting on to his late 20s, 27, 28, keeps trying things that don't work and keeps falling back into the parents' safety net. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what you do about it, actually.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
For once, I think you've actually hit the nail completely on the head.
Thank you.
You're entirely correct.
Thank you.
It's the first time I've agreed with you for a very long time.
Good.
But let's talk some more about that coming up. We've got Ask Porky coming up very, very shortly. Right now, though, we're going to find out what's going on in the old transfer market because the window may not yet be open, but there's lots of things going on. Mr. Russell Hargreaves is here. Russell.
Gentlemen,
good morning.
How you doing, mate? All good. Yeah, plenty going on. West Ham, Mike, Manchester United, Everton, and the future of Johan Kabaye would be four of the major things.
Well, let's start with
Everton,
as it would be Mr. Parry's main interest, obviously.
Well, I don't know how much, Porky, you know about this, but James McCarthy has apparently had a fallout with the hierarchy at the club.
Well, I know that he is not 100% happy, yeah.
Yeah, so apparently he has been promised a new improved contract, and that is yet to be offered to him. Apparently he's not actually asked to leave as yet, but as you rightly say, is thought to be fairly miffed. Now, he cost £13 million from Wigan in 2013. I think you'd agree. He's been a very good player, hasn't he?
Oh, yeah, he's terrific.
At 24, he's got a huge amount to give, but questions now being asked in both the Mail and the Liverpool Echo as well about whether this rift, if it's not sorted soon, could see him actually potentially
but that doesn't mean the club's in the wrong. These disputes are always going on between player, agent, club. And you know, it's the most difficult relationship in sport.
You've often said if a player doesn't want to play for the club, then you should get rid of him.
I totally agree. But
you don't get rid of McCarthy.
But we're not quite at that stage yet, I think is the point.
No, but McCarthy hasn't said, like some players on Merseyside, I've got ambitions to play for a bigger club. He hasn't said that. What he said is he feels that he's been,
he wants more money.
Well, apparently he's been told he'll have it, is what he's saying, apparently.
What he's saying I don't think the club are fulfilling obligations that I believe they gave me. And the club are saying, well, hang on, what were these obligations? Right. It's a contractual dispute.
Yeah, exactly. So I think at the moment it could yet get resolved, but I think we've got a key
Let's hope it does.
Few weeks ahead. So that's one. Yeah. A couple more intriguing ones. I think we'll go Man United next if we can, guys. First of all, obviously having missed out on Dani Alves, the right-back, who's re-signed a little bit surprisingly for Barcelona. Yeah. Gregory van der Wiel, who is right-back at Paris Saint-Germain, is being lined up in a £7 million deal as the man as backup. He's got a year left on his deal.
Who's he play for?
He's at PSG.
27 years old he is.
Yeah, I've never heard of him. Yeah, it's no wonder I've never heard of him. He hasn't made his mark on the football world by the age of 27.
Get the odd late bloomer. But, I mean, he plays on and off a decent amount for PSG. He's an OK player, but as a potential...
It's not a stellar signing, though, is it?
Well, where's he going? United?
Well, yeah, United are being linked to him, and also, quite interestingly, in The Sun this morning up front, to Mario Mandzukic of Atletico Madrid, who, of course, is a quality player. 20 goals in 37 games he scored for Atletico last season. Signed from Bayern Munich for $18.5 million. But again, guys, stories about a fallout with manager Diego Simeone, and could be on his way to replace, obviously, Falcao and potentially Van Persie.
He must be getting fed up, old Simeone. He must be. Eventually, someone will get him out of there, because every single year he seems to lose his best striker.
And every year he does pretty well to get them up to second, third in the table, and manages to kind of redo most of the damage, or undo most of the damage. But you do wonder, as you say, whether eventually he'll get sick of it. So revolving doors at United, and we think Van Persie won't be going to Lazio, because their sporting director has said that he's outside our cost parameters.
I thought he was going to Juve anyway.
Well, that has obviously been suggested over the last 48 hours. So a couple of strikers and potentially a right back at Manchester United. Now, West Ham is another important one to keep an eye on as well, because as we know, Slaven Bilic is in, and we do expect a few changes and new faces, and two are being suggested. In the Daily Mirror, Spanish midfielder Pedro Obiang, who's a 23-year-old, who Stoke are keen on as well. He's been captain under 17, 19 and 21 level, but not for the Spanish national side as yet. He would cost about £4.4 million. And up front, here's an interesting one. Could West Ham prize Loic Remy away from Chelsea? Because he's not exactly had the first-team opportunities he
hasn't, although I was listening to Jason Cundy earlier, and he was saying he's actually got a more impressive goals per minutes ratio at Chelsea than Diego Costa. I'm not sure if...
And he's a slightly different option as well, because he's not that kind of big out-and-out target man. He's kind of a slightly more mobile forward that you can fit into quite a few different roles. But obviously West Ham would love to have that kind of option as well. So the Daily Express is saying Remy. As I say, the Mail is saying Obiang. So a couple to watch there. The other one, if I can mention it as well, is Johan Kabaye. As we know, brilliant when he was at Newcastle.
Well, Johan Kebab, as jokingly called him.
Exactly. Oh, God, yeah, exactly. Obviously, had his head turned when Arsenal were interested. Awkward standoff with Newcastle. Stayed, then eventually went to Paris Saint-Germain, where he thought everything would fall into place. It hasn't. He's not had the first-team opportunities he wanted. He was shocking, by all accounts, for France in their 4-3 defeat to the Netherlands at the weekend. Booked and taken off at half-time for the national team. He's at a crossroads at 29. Needs more first-team action. Played well under Alan Pardew. Will he be going to Crystal Palace? Le Parisien is saying this morning that even though it would be a costly deal, Palace might just go out there and say, you know what, we'll stick some money on this man. Because when he's good, I think you'd agree he is very good, but needs someone just to get the best back out of him again.
Okay.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Well, Russell, thanks very much indeed. We'll have more updates for you throughout the month here, of course, on TalkSport, and more specifically at the same time tomorrow. Coming up next, Joe, and so I guess, we should get on with it.
Hang on, wait a minute. Let me just get this absolutely straight. You've just trashed the next section of the show.
No, I have not trashed it.
Because it basically focuses on me.
Not at all, no.
You've just said you'd rather listen to a 35-year-old, 40-year-old Beatles record, 45-year-old Beatles record, I've just reminded, than listen to the next section of the show, which is Ask Porky, which helps our listeners, by the way.
I know.
I mean, talk about a fat, selfish individual. We're talking about you.
You got the wrong end of the stick there. Absolutely wrong end of the stick. I was just enjoying the music there, and sometimes.
Well, why don't you go home tomorrow morning, put your CD on, and stuff a couple of kebabs down your throat for breakfast and listen to a bit of music.
It's not a bad idea.
And stop moaning about it in the studio.
Might have a glass of wine while I'm at it. Right, are you ready for question number 1?
Certainly.
It comes from Michael, who says, as a man of the people, do you have any advice for me heading to the Royal Enclosure at Ascot next week?
Yeah, OK. I'll tell you exactly what to do. First of all, you've got to dress in all the gear. You've got to have the morning suit on to get into the Royal Enclosure, OK? Been there myself with Mr Brazil and a few friends. Secondly, make sure that you get your hat fitted on properly, right? Because you wear a top hat.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I was there once and we were outside Mr Magnier's
So you have to wear the whole kind of morning suit?
You have to wear the whole morning suit.
With tails and everything?
With tails and everything and a top hat.
So were you dressed like that?
Of course I was dressed like that.
I'd love to see a picture of you dressed like that.
And this is... What's the name of this chap, please, again?
Michael.
Right, Michael. The crucial thing is to get the hat right, OK? Now, what I recommend is that before you leave home, you take the inside of a newspaper, the centre spread, you roll it up into like a long sort of faggot thing.
Yeah, like a tube.
Yeah, like a tube. You wrap it round and put it on your head before you put your top hat on. If you don't, your top hat during the course of the day will fall further and further and further down your head until it's resting on your nose.
You sure you didn't just have the wrong size hat on?
No, it happens. What happens is the hat expands during the day because it loses its tightness after just coming out the cleaners. The elasticity coming out the cleaners. Yeah. And you perspire during the day, and the combination of perspiration around the top of your head with the fact that the hat is moving out because it's the starch is wearing thin on it, it'll slip down your face and it will literally rest on your nose and below your ears. You look like a complete idiot, and even though you say, well, I'll just push it back up again, it won't stay up on its own accord. So that is the thing you've got to watch when you're in the Royal Enclosure, that you don't look like a blithering idiot with a top hat covering your face, as I once saw happen to Rod Stewart as he was entering Mr Magnier's box at Royal Ascot.
Well, I suppose Rod Stewart could get away with it. Martin says this, Porky, my wife is away for the next 4 days. Should I stay at home and do the housework, or is it bladderation station time?
What I would do is I would get out and go on a course of responsible bladderation, OK?
Responsible bladderation.
Responsible bladderation. Yeah. And that means don't go wild, because you might do things you regret. For instance, you might get sucked into going into casinos and losing all your money. You might wink at a young lady in a pub and she might misinterpret that for a come-on. Yeah. And you might find yourself then in a situation where you're compromising your marital faiths and beliefs. Yeah. And the other thing which you mustn't get into is extreme drinking, because if you do, A, it could harm your health, but B, you will make strange decisions about your life. You will think, I'm trapped in my marriage, and now that I am free for 4 days, I quite like the feel of freedom, and I'm going to keep it going. That could result in this time next year you're losing your house, probably your job, because your wife will complain to your employer that you're a monster and you're not looking after her properly. You might have trouble keeping in touch with family members, including your children, if you've got any. Yeah. And the fourth and most obvious thing is you could end up as a drunk and a down and out. Don't do it.
That wouldn't be helpful.
Don't do it. But responsible bladderation means enjoy yourself with a few drinks, but nowhere to draw the line.
Yeah, but no one to come home.
Jerry, and remember, do not follow, I'm sorry, Mike Graham's...
answers to this.
Don't follow Mike Graham's Saturday night pattern. One white, one red, one rosé, bottle of brandy. Yeah, that's disaster.
Absolutely not true. Jerry says, will Mike Parry ever follow the Two Mikes account on Twitter? That's a good question.
Well,
do you not follow the Two Mikes on Twitter?
I think I do, don't I?
I don't know.
Do you know what? I sometimes wonder why I don't see a lot of the.
So you don't follow the
stuff.
Two Mikes on Twitter? Well, that would be why then.
I thought I did. I mean, that's a very good point. The answer to that is yes, of course I will. If I don't already, I will. Yeah. I'm very high up on the technology, but there's an awful lot of information I have to take in throughout the day to keep on top of the game. For instance, today we were talking to a theatre in Scotland where we might be going in December to perform a live show.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll have a look at your information devices. Okay. That may explain quite a lot if you're not following the Two Mikes, because you sometimes don't see things. Right. Here's one from Becky in New Zealand. Yes. There are over 40 million sheep in New Zealand and no shepherds. Should I move now or prepare for the coming apocalypse?
I've just pressed the button following on the Two Mics account. I've got my information device in front of me.
So you are now following the Two Mics.
I'm now following,
Well done.
But thank you very much indeed for pointing that out.
Congratulations.
Right. Now, what was that question again, please?
You want me to read it again?
Yes, I do, yeah. Well, you've thrown it away already.
I've already discarded it.
Right,
It's not easy, this. There are over 40 million sheep in New Zealand and no shepherds. Should I move now or prepare for the coming apocalypse?
What's going to happen is that the sheep industry can exist without shepherds, but not for very long. But it can not exist without sheep for obvious reasons. Now, if the absence of shepherds means that the sheep are going to be dishevelled and unruly, and when sheep get dishevelled and unruly, they don't necessarily lose their impact on a country. The impact of sheep on a country is to keep foliage down. Okay, as long as you've got loads of sheep, the country will be fine. If the sheep disappeared, and we did a story last night on this show about 600 sheep being kidnapped from a field in the middle of the night, rustled and taken away. That means that field will now get overgrown, because that's what sheep do. That's what sheep were put on the earth for, to keep the foliage down during the Middle Ages when we didn't have lawnmowers. Right. And if you haven't got a lawnmower or a scythe to keep the foliage down, it's the sheep who do it.
Is that right?
Take the sheep away and we could all starve to death. Okay. We could starve to death because all arable land will get overgrown, and that and the combination of the fact that we don't have a Royal Navy anymore and we can't stop pirates from kidnapping the food.
Some of your answers can be a bit shorter.
Hang on, kidnapping the food convoys which will have to come to this country to replace the loss of sheep means we could be in a perilous situation in the future, and so could New Zealand, because New Zealand, like Great Britain, is an island.
Now, can I just ask you to give your answer slightly more briefly, please, because we haven't got through enough of these yet. Could we please have an iron ore update, says Callie?
The iron ore situation's not good, because demand has gone down in China, because China, of course, was an economic miracle for 10 or 12 years, but like all great economic booms, the bubble sometimes bursts. It's not as good as it used to be. It's causing massive problems, particularly in Western Australia. The iron ore industry in Western Australia is based largely on the city of Perth, which is the final, final
Did you
point.
listen to the bit where I said, can you make these shorter?
Yeah, I am. And there's a bit of a recession in the iron ore industry because building has slowed down in China. That's basically it.
All right, thank you. Cam says this.
Yes.
Porky, did you ever date a woman taller than you, and if so, did it bother you?
When I was about 17, I went to a dance at the Chester Grosvenor Rowing Club in the clubhouse. It's on the banks of the River Dee, next to a lovely pub called The Boat House. There was a girl there who was 6'4" tall, beautiful girl, mini skirt, long black boots, who stepped forward when she looked embarrassed and... Sorry, we're laughing.
Who stepped forward?
Carry on. Who stepped forward when the poor girl looked embarrassed in the company of others because we were all sort of just teenagers and all that? It was the Porkmeister, and I have to say, I forged a great relationship with that young lady. Can't go into too much detail, but no, I've never been intimidated by tall women. I think they look beautiful.
All right, well, here's one from Michael, slightly closer to the bone. I had my hair coiffed for a date with a potential sex victim, but she still didn't want full sex. Should I impress her with a nutritional meal of fish fingers, or should I pursue her married sister?
Well, I'm sorry, but that's a bit of a smutty question, because when we're talking about full sex and all that, I cannot get involved in advising on physical intimacy with a lady. That's down to the individual. Yeah. However, if you do want to invite her around for a few fish fingers, I can't say anything wrong with that. What are you laughing at? That's what he asked me.
Come round for a few fish fingers. Yeah, great line.
Yeah.
Tremendous.
Yeah, I can't say anything wrong with that. It proves that you are a man of the people, a normal, natural man like me, and that exudes warmth and companionship.
Indeed. I performed terribly in a weekly competition at work, says Stephen, and then have to beg the judges to favour me. Should I just give up?
No, if I were you, I would not call it begging at all. I would call it lobbying. And what lobbying is all about is trying to convince people of the righteousness of your argument. That's what you're going to have to do for the rest of your life. Once you give up on that, then you've had it. You will slip down the greasy pole of achievement until you're a nobody. Nobody wants to be a nobody. Be a somebody and keep lobbying.
Now, here's one from Matt, who says, after watching an inexplicably late dive from a female goalie, will women's football ever be taken seriously? This is after the World Cup. England lost to France last night.
Yeah, 1-0, wasn't it? Well, of course it'll be taken seriously. You know, it's a game which is becoming increasingly popular. I mean, certainly millions of women in the United States like to play it, and they're the biggest country in the world when it comes to active participation in sport. And so I would say it's got a great future. I get a little bit worried that, you sometimes sort of encouraged to become over-enthusiastic about sports you don't particularly want to get involved in, but women's sports don't fall into that category.
We've only got time for one more question, I'm afraid.
Come on, then,
it comes from Darren. It says, it's my wife's 40th birthday on Thursday. What should I buy her?
Well, first of all, congratulations to your wife for reaching such a great age. It's
old.
Life begins at 40. And what was the question? What should I buy her?
What should you buy for a birthday?
I'd buy something very, very nice from a jeweller's, seriously, to mark the 40th. Something like, a chain.
A chain?
Like a neck chain. What's it called? A necklace. Sorry, necklace, yeah. Neck chain. A necklace with a pendant on it, or a bracelet, or what I would do is I'd do the ultimate one at 40, go and get yourself a loan and buy your wife a nice ladies' Rolex watch. That is the ultimate present. Without a shadow of a doubt.
Marvellous. Yeah. And then you can go and visit
I had my Rolex watch on, didn't I, the other night at the show?
Yeah. And then you can take it down to scientist's gaff in St James's if he wants it fixed, can't he?
Why do you have to belittle everything I say?
I'm not doing that.
That is the Rolex workshop in this country. Yeah. And only people who own proper Rolexes get in there.
Well, I mean, everyone knows you visit a place full of men in white coats. I mean, that's on a regular basis. That was Ask Porky. We'll have loads more of the same next week. If we didn't get a chance to read yours out, I'm sorry. We did get an awful lot this week, but time is often limited when Mr. Parry wants to give such fulsome answers because he wants to help. Coming up, we're going to talk about the man who invented rock and roll. This is TalkSport.
Just let me hear some of that rock and roll music. Any old way you choose it. It's got a backbeat, you can't lose it. Any old time you use it. It's gotta be rock and roll music. If you wanna dance with me. If you wanna dance with me. I have no kick against modern jazz. Unless they try to play it too darn fast.
This is TalkSport Extra Time. We are the Two Mics. There will be a podcast coming out a little while later this morning, around about 5 hours from now, probably. Keep following at the Two Mics. If you're not doing it already, then you should be, because that's where you'll find out all the information that we have for you. Also, check our website, which is thetwomics.co.uk, where you'll get all the information and all the shows that we're doing around the country as well. Now, there's a reason why we're talking about the man who invented rock and roll,
Certainly
right?
is, yeah.
Tell us why.
Right, his name is Les Paul. Okay, 100 years ago today he was born. And this guy literally invented the electric guitar.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, it's a fascinating story, which somebody rang up and told me about, and suggested you might want to talk about it. To be honest, because although his name is Les Paul, he invented the guitar called what was it called?
Gibson.
The Gibson. That's it. Well done. And apparently the Gibson guitar has been the basic instrument which has created some of the greatest music of our lifetime.
Right.
So, for instance, it was the guitar that Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin played all the time, but so did Eric Clapton, so did George Harrison. The great guitarist
Pete Townsend.
And by the way, a guy who was very proficient on it, who I didn't realise even played guitar, was Bob Marley. Now I thought Bob Marley was a singer, but he wasn't. He was a
he was a songwriter as well.
Yeah, creative musician. Mark Bolan played it. Remember T-Rex? Jeepster and all that kind of stuff. Pete Townsend played it.
Yeah, I just said that.
Oh, did you? Okay, Jeff Beck.
Peter Frampton.
Peter Frampton, Keith Richards, right? Now, the thing is, what is so interesting about it is there was not an electric guitar before Les Paul came along. And the first time he put it together, and by the way, if he was born in 1915, and he was putting this guitar together when he was 13, right? So at 13, he was singing and playing barbecues and roadhouses and all this, and became very frustrated with the limitations of his acoustic instrument. That's all he had, okay? Yeah. So wanting to be heard by more people when he went to do a gig in a barn, because that's what they have in Wisconsin, a load of barns.
Yeah.
And
it's a big dairy state, isn't it?
Exactly, that's right, yeah. So what he did is, they had radios in those days, right, like sort of basic radio.
Yeah.
So he wired a gramophone needle to the base of his then acoustic guitar, right, and then connected it to a radio speaker.
Yeah.
A very primitive arrangement. It had its limitations because it was so heavy, he had to carry it around.
Right.
But he worked on it for the next, 10 years, okay? And what he used to do was, he'd take an acoustic guitar, stuff it full of rags and socks and tablecloth, and even bags of plaster of Paris to try and sort of numb the sound from within the guitar, right? And none of this worked until one afternoon, he literally stretched a guitar string over a 2-foot piece of an iron train track.
Right.
I mean, literally an iron piece of metal track from
an actual railway.
From a railway.
Yeah.
He found it lying at the roadside, and he stretched a guitar string over that, and he said in a quote in a book written about him, "Lo and behold, I played it through my mother's radio, and I got the most beautiful sound you could ever imagine. The world's first electric guitar had been invented, or at least nearly invented. It was too heavy to lift again because of the metal track it was built upon, and had only one note, But nevertheless, the man who was then a teenager, Les Paul, had proved it could be done. It took until 1941 before he could perfect it. After dropping out of school to move to New York and become a full-time musician, he became friendly with some workers in the Epiphone guitar factory. Yeah. They still only made acoustic guitars. They let him have access to the equipment on Sundays, and after months of experiments, he created an instrument he dubbed the log guitar. He cut in half a standard guitar. So if you think about how thick an acoustic guitar is, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. He has to have a sort of chamber, doesn't it?
He has to have a chamber inside it, absolutely right, for the echo. He literally cut that in half, stretched the strings over a piece of pine, glued the body back together again, added a pickup, like a microphone inside, wired it up to an amplifier, and took it to a gig. It looked ugly, but it played loud, and the audience went wild. And then he had to spend another 10 years convincing the music industry to produce this guitar on a commercial basis.
Well, it was in the 50s, wasn't it, where Bill Haley and people like that suddenly started using electric guitars.
Yeah, he went to a guitar maker called Gibson. They laughed him out of his first meeting, saying it was a ridiculous idea, it would never work. Yeah. It was a broomstick with pickups on, and the public didn't want noisy music. But by 1952, there was a change in the air, a new generation of restless teenagers emerging, and Les Paul was called back to the Gibson company and asked to work on developing this again. Could you invent an electric guitar? Within a year, the guitar hit the shops, everything changed. In 1954, Bill Haley was the first...
That's what I just told you.
What?
I just told you. Bill Haley was the first guy to use an electric guitar.
Yeah, well, I'm just explaining how it came about. I'm just explaining how it became the first professional musician to use an electric guitar. He released Rock Around the Clock, and Elvis Presley signed to Sun Studios and Rock and Roll picked up on it and started using it. This is the story of the modern era of the electric guitar. From Led Zeppelin's Jimmy Page...
Are you just going to keep reading this?
No, hang on. And Slash from Guns N' Roses, some of the greatest rock records ever. Now, isn't that fantastic?
It is amazing.
Isn't that fantastic?
And he's got a monument in his hometown as well, down in Wisconsin.
Yes, that's right, yeah. But I mean, when we take it for granted, when
Well, was he a genius?
Of course he was a genius.
You see?
He invented something that nobody could even conceive.
See, I don't think he was.
Of course he was. He invented the electric guitar. Yeah. Don't you think that's genius?
I know, I think it's an incredible thing that he did, but I don't know that makes him a genius, just to go back onto that conversation we were having before. I think
Mikey, imagine the world without electric guitars, seriously.
Yeah, no, I can't.
The only sort of songs you'd get these days would be the Seekers, When will a good apple fall on my side of the street? What are you laughing at?
What on earth did that come from?
That was a Seekers song.
Really?
Yeah,
I'm sure it was, but I mean, why would you even have that in your memory banks?
Didn't you remember Judith Durham and the Seekers? And I know there'll never be another you.
I remember them, yeah.
But can you in your head? Can you hear the acoustic guitar of the Seekers?
Yes, I can.
And it's only acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
I mean, for instance...
Well, it's called folk music, isn't it?
Yeah, for instance...
They still have folk music.
If Les Paul had not invented his Gibson guitar, we would still now all be hailing... somebody like Roger Whittaker as the greatest musician of the age.
Well, I'm not sure that's true.
Who's that? Who's the Irish guy with the jumper who used to sit in the rocking chair?
Val Doonican.
Val Doonican would be... he would be... I mean, millions of kids, during the 60s and the 70s who idolised the Beatles and the Stones would in fact be idolising Val Doonican.
I'm not sure that's true.
And people like him.
I mean, there's plenty of bands that don't use electric guitars, and there's plenty of very, very, very good guitar players who didn't play on electric guitars. You wouldn't be hailing people like that.
Of course you would. Of course you would.
And surely somebody else would have invented the electric guitar if he hadn't.
No, they didn't. No, because he had a vision, didn't he? He had a vision. He created it. The other group in the 60s who only played acoustic guitars were those two brothers who sang, please lock me away and don't allow the day here inside
the Righteous
where
Brothers?
I hide. No, it was now Paul McCartney. I tell you what it was. It was Jane Asher's brother.
Yeah.
Paul. Yeah. Or Peter. Was it Peter Asher? It was Peter.
Paul and Mary, you mean?
No, it wasn't Peter, Paul and Mary. No, they sang Leaving on a Jet Plane.
Yeah.
No, this was Jane Asher's brother, and Paul McCartney wrote that song for them. Please lock me away.
I know the song,
yeah. Here inside where I hide my loneliness, I don't care what they say, I can't stay in a world without love. Now, they were acoustic guitars, and they were called... I'm sure they were called... They were called. I thought they were called Peter and Paul, but that was Peter, Paul and Mary.
That was
You're
Peter,
right.
Paul and Mary.
Leaving on
it
the
was
jet
Peter
plane.
and Paul without.
Yeah, it was. I think it was. I think it could have been
Was it
just
Peter
Peter
and
and
Gordon,
Paul.
maybe?
Peter and Gordon. Was it Peter and Gordon?
Peter and Gordon.
Peter and Gordon.
It's like,
Peter
like Tony and Gordon.
Yes,
How excited you are with all these names.
Yeah, but I mean, it was great stuff. And so you know, I have to say that the story of the electric guitar and Les Paul is just one of the great stories of the 20th century.
Yes.
It has to be, because it changed the whole culture of the world.
Yeah.
Can you imagine George Harrison trying to play...
While My Guitar Gently Weeps.
Yeah, well, that's it. But you know who played the main guitar lead on While My Guitar Gently Weeps?
Eric Clapton.
He did, indeed, absolutely right. But he played it on a Les Paul Gibson guitar, which apparently is going to be sold for... No, I've got this wrong. The first song that Beatles recorded, Love Me Do.
Yeah.
Love Me Do.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah, all right.
No,
Okay.
I love you.
You didn't get that right in the Porky
Boom.
quiz, do you remember?
Didn't I?
When I asked you what the first song was.
Oh,
the
you
first number one
gerrymandered
was.
the answer. Anyway, you won't believe this, although that
No,
was...
I probably won't, no.
That is the least known of the Beatles' hits, because the first one only got to number 16. The guitar that John Lennon played on that recording was a Les Paul Gibson.
Was it?
Which is about to be sold in New York at an auction and will raise an expected £525,000.
I'm not surprised.
I mean, that is amazing.
Why don't you buy it?
It's just amazing.
Why don't you
know,
buy it?
if I had the funds, I would. I would, for obvious reasons, you know.
If you had the funds.
What a memento
Not
that
if you
would
could
be.
afford it. David has sent a picture in of Mick Ronson playing his Les Paul. How about that? You know who Mick Ronson is?
Mick Ronson.
Yeah. You ever heard of Mick Ronson?
What group is he in?
He used to play David Bowie.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And
but
Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Great guitarist.
I just think it's an absolutely fantastic story, you know, just so... oh, and by the way, listen, the other thing I was going to tell you was...
Yeah, go on.
What about this? British stars dominate world pop chart sales.
Yeah.
Ever since the British invasion of the US in the 60s, this country's pop musicians have punched above their weight. But even the Beatles cannot compete with the might of One Direction, Ed Sheeran and Coldplay.
Yeah, it's not exactly a great trio, is it?
Well, I don't sound like the Beatles to me. But anyway, it says a rush of successful British acts meant that more than 1 in 7 albums sold worldwide last year came from the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
More than 1 in 7 of worldwide sales.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Well, there's no doubt that English music has always sort of punched, or British music, we should say, has always punched above its weight. Let me read you a couple of tweets out on various subjects that have come in.
Yes.
Here's one from Amanda in Kingston upon Thames, who's texted into 81089. She says, Porky in a morning suit would look like the Penguin out of Batman. Here's one from someone who calls himself the Uber fan. If the December live show's in Glasgow, I was thinking of buying all the tickets and sitting on my own in the front row. What do you make of that?
Why? Why would you want to do that?
Well, I don't know.
I know, yeah.
And Bob in Sheffield says, Mike Graham, your show should use the 7-second delay system to cut out all the names given out by Big Gob Mr. Parry.
Why? I don't offend anybody or hurt anybody. Everybody I speak of warmly for their contribution to the development of my life, so I really wouldn't worry about that, honestly.
Yeah.
Now, listen, I want to show you something, man.
Yeah, go on.
You know that one of the biggest problems we have in life these days is how quickly the battery runs out on your mobile phone.
I don't have that problem.
You do have the problem.
No, I don't. Not anymore.
How come half the time when we come in here, you say to our tech genie...
our tech genie?
Genius.
Well, in a bottle.
So,
come out of the bottle, help us out.
And you say, have you got the charger? Because you're always charging up your phone.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
No, he's always asking me for a charger.
No, you're always asking him.
And I'm always giving him my charger.
Anyway, look, I'll tell you what happened. The other day, I was out and about, and I thought, I've got to try and find something.
How's that charger working in your car, by the way? Is it any better?
No, it's useless. I don't know why.
So you got no brakes, you got no charger.
Well,
the old jalop, it's time to get rid of it, I think.
You might be right.
Shocking.
Anyway, the point of the story is, right, I went into another car phone warehouse, and I said, look, do you have any such thing as a lightweight charger?
Yeah.
Because carrying a charger around in your pocket is a nuisance.
Yeah.
So, anyway, the girl was very, very helpful.
Yeah.
They
must love you, because you go there and spend a fortune, don't you?
I've got about 12
Is that a lightweight charger?
This is a lightweight charger.
It's a very big plug.
No, it's not. I'm going to show you.
Have a feel of it.
Okay.
Let me feel it.
Okay.
No, it's quite light.
Right, now,
but it's still bulky, though.
No, it's not. This is the point. Now, you see it. Now, explain to the audience. It's a 3-pin plug, right?
It's a normal 3-pin plug, yeah.
Right, but look, and it's got a lead off it as well.
Yeah, it's got a lead. It goes
First
into
of
the
all,
phone.
I pull the lead out.
Yeah, okay.
Right, so what is it now? Just a 3-point plug?
Yeah.
Yeah, but watch this.
What have you done?
It's now only a 2-point plug.
What?
I've pushed one of the plugs in, see?
No, you haven't.
Yes, I have. The one of the points in.
No, you haven't. It's still sticking out.
No, but watch, look. See? See, that goes into the wall now, three pins, right? But then the top pin, you can push back into the plug.
Well, what's the point of that?
So I do 2 pins. Well, it means it's lighter in your pocket. It doesn't take up as much room.
Yeah, but what can you plug it into, though, if it's only got 2 pins?
Well, you can't, you fool. But then you take it out your pocket and you pull the 3rd pin out.
Yeah.
So it's all right.
Well, how does that make it any lighter?
And Because it makes it less bulky. And then
it doesn't.
Out of my other pocket...
It's exactly the same size.
No, it's not. Then no, it's not. It hasn't got the third pin on top. Then out of my other pocket... no, stop laughing. Out of my other pocket, I take the lead, because I carry it. Sometimes I carry this lead around in my sock.
Yeah.
That's how lightweight it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably why you've got sore feet.
So it doesn't bulk up. And I push the lead into...
That's not any smaller than that. That's an iPhone charger, right?
Yeah.
It's just a regular plug.
No.
I don't see how it's any lighter.
Look, because I push my third pin in.
Yeah, but it doesn't
now it's
make
only
it
got 2 pins.
Yeah, but it doesn't make it any smaller.
It does. Makes it smaller.
Rubbish.
It does.
Why don't you just get one of those cordless chargers?
Cordless?
Yeah, a cordless charger, and that way you don't have to have anything that's got a cord on it.
What's a cordless charger?
It's a cordless charger. It means that you charge the cordless charger before you leave home, you take that out with you, and then you just stick your phone on the top of it. They're advertising them now.
Really?
You stick your phone on the top of it, and it charges.
How much extra battery life does it give you?
Oh, about weeks. It's worth having.
You're mad. You're mad. You know what you're talking about as usual.
You've been conned as usual by the people that you went and bought some stuff. How many of those did you buy? 10?
No, just the one.
All right, okay. He is Mike Porky Parry. Tomorrow night, of course, it is a Porky Vision time, and then the quiz, as he says, will be on Colombo this week. So it's going to be a tough job for the independent quiz masters. This is Talk Sport. We are the two Mikes.
Look at the light! Don't forget to come back tomorrow for another sparkling, as fizzy as a bottle of champagne podcast from the two Mikes.
What about someone like, I don't know, Pythagoras?
Pythagoras?
Yeah. Was he a genius?
I didn't even know he existed. I thought he was a mathematical equation. What are you laughing at?
What do you think came up with Pythagoras' theorem?
I thought it was Archimedes or somebody like that who just named it Pythagoras.
Yeah.
It sounded good.
Yeah, because he had a dual personality.
No, well, not...
And he thought, I know, I'll come up with a theory and name it after somebody that doesn't exist.
I don't think Pythagoras is a bloke anyway. I think you're winding me up.
No, I'm not winding you up.
Well, go on, show me a picture of it.
I'll show you a picture of Pythagoras.
A picture of Pythagoras.
Yeah, I'll show you one in a minute.
It was old Beethoven who cut his ear off, wasn't it?
Eh? No, it was Van Gogh.
If you love the Two Mikes podcast, you'll love the live show. Weekday overnights from 1am on DAB Digital Radio and 1089 and 1053 AM and via the TalkSport app. TalkSport, your Premier League station with exclusive commentaries every weekend.
What an absolute corker!
TalkSport.